Recording in progress.
I'll call the meeting to order. Do you want to call the roll?
Commissioner Metz,
Present.
Commissioner Tucker,
Present.
Commissioner Croft, present, Chair Scharf,
Present.
Vice Chair Mater, present, Commissioner Gupta,
Present.
6 present.
All right. Do we have any agenda changes, deletions, or additions?
There are
No.
no changes.
No changes, right? All right. Next, we'll go to public comment for items not on the agenda.
If any member of the public would like to speak on an item not on the agenda, please raise your hand or press *9 now. We do have 2 comments in person.
All
We'll
right.
start with Peter D.
Welcome, Peter D.
Good evening, Peter Dreckmeyer, Tuolumne River Trust. I sent you a letter on Monday. Hope you got that. And while I was appalled that the SFPUC didn't respond to the questions you drafted and submitted by Greerstone, I wasn't surprised because that's the standard of operation there. We've caught them spreading disinformation for years about socioeconomic impacts, about rationing, extreme rationing. In this case, it was demand projections that they tried to put into the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan that were just flat out wrong. But there are never any there's never any repercussions. The commission there, they're appointed by the mayor, who's very hands-off. 3 of them have been on for about 8 months. 1 has been on for 2 years. So they don't have the historic knowledge. And they've gotten away with it. But in this case, Palo Alto invested $559,000 on the One Water plan that we've determined was based on a false premise of 50% rationing. And I think there's a tendency to kind of hope that consultant contracts like that get forgotten and we move on. But as Mayor Lowing knows, consultants are a big issue right now in Palo Alto politics. There's a lot of attention to that. And so I think you've all positioned yourself really well in that you acknowledged there was a problem with this contract and you took action and initiated the letter to the SFPUC. I hope you won't give up on it. PUC didn't respond. We're hoping that the BOSCA Policy Committee next Wednesday will take up the issue per Greerstone's request at the last BOSCA board meeting. And it would be really important that we push this through. The PUC, they expect people to give up. They don't know Palo Alto. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dave W.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you all for your service. I just wanted to make a quick comment regarding transparency. I first learned of the response from the SFPUC from Peter, and I just wanted to mention that, transparency is one of the most important things we have as a public institution. And to me, what goes hand in hand with transparency is good journalism. And if we don't have transparency, it's hard to have good journalism. So when you get letters like this, I hope you will share them with the public as early and as quickly as possible, just to help on the transparency front. And I'll just actually comment, we have Mr. Smegel here from BOSCA, and I found that they've been, under his leadership, very good on transparency. And so I just hope we continue that to ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Now we move to approval of the minutes. So a couple things. First of all, we're changing the way we do if you want to speak. If you want to speak, there's a little toggle thing on the side here. Do you all see it? Yes. If you push the toggle thing, it will light up in front of me, and I will know that you want to speak. All right. Everyone comfortable with where that is? The light shows up here. So I've got, yes. Yes, I've got Metz. Chris, I don't have yours lit up. Okay.
You'll have to lift it up. Yes.
Yep, now it's lifted. Yep, so I have everyone but Mayor Lowens, which I know he knows how to use it, so that's not a problem. All right,
But Greg,
yes,
I was going to mention that it seriously raises the bar on the job of the vice chair, because you got to watch the order in which they appear and
Correct.
report it to the chair so that you don't get in fights. I say this from a lot of experience.
thank you. All right, now we're on minutes. I see that Commissioner Gupta has suggested a number of amendments regarding the work plan topics for the minutes. Is that correct?
Really, it's just one amendment. It just is replacing the current action section in the minutes with this proposed revised one.
What page is that on? I'm sure you know.
I'll have to flip to it. That would be on page 37 of the minutes, package page 42. You'll see an action paragraph in bold.
So what you're suggesting is where it says action 2, that stays, or where does this join into the minutes?
So this amendment is a replacement for the current action paragraph.
So all of action where it says item 2, it would start with work plan topic 1. Is that what it would say?
That's correct. It would start with the word action from the proposed
So-
amendment.
You would take out item 3 is withdrawn and the respective representatives would be in touch while agendizing data centers. You're taking all that out?
That's covered by the amendment.
Well, maybe I'm missing something, but what I see is work plan topic 1, long-term national gas strategy. Outcome, the topic passed as a distinct work plan item.
The proposed amendment is on packet page 44,
What's on 44?
the proposed amendment. I have provided as public comment a document that shows the transcript level support for the amendment. So
Oh.
that's what was placed on the DS for each commissioner today, in case any commissioners had questions as to the support for the amendments. But the actual amendments are these 2 pages, packet page 44 and packet page 45. And the reason for this is if you read the current action paragraph, you'll see that
So it's that action. It's that, it's page 40, packet page 44. It's not the other one. Okay.
that's correct.
All right. Go ahead.
My understanding of minutes is that they are supposed to be a direct recounting of what was actually said in the video, in the recording. I genuinely appreciate the summary that you provided, but I don't think that it is a direct documentation of the verbatim words that were said. And so I'm wondering if it's possible to include this as part of the work plan rather than as minutes, because I think that's where you care that it's documented anyway. And I'm not sure that I can claim that I said all of the stuff that is written down.
Sure. So to explain this further, if you look at what's currently in our minutes, it's not accurate. There are literal blanks with citations to timestamps. So the current version that is currently in the minutes, and no disparagement to staff. This was a very long meeting. The actual minutes that are included here are very detailed and comprehensive, and I found them to be very accurate. But the action component that's currently included in our minutes is not complete and it's not accurate. So the proposed amendment is replacing the section with a very accurate based, and I provided literally transcript level with timestamp support if you have any questions. But this is not the amendment. The amendment is this. document here, the 2 pages that are included in the packet.
So what you really want to do is, just so we're all clear, you want to take this document you provided at places and replace packet page 44 and packet page 45 with it. Is that correct?
No, so the packet page 44 and 45 will replace the action paragraph section on packet page 42. The document that was provided on the DS this evening is just additional support in case commissioners had questions as to what underlies each of the items.
Okay, I am really confused. So staff provided packet page 44 and 45 as part of the minutes. That is already in the minutes. Correct.
In the proposed minutes that you had before, this was the direction
Yes.
for consideration, inclusion of Commissioner Gupta's action items, which were attached to the back. That's what we have done.
Oh, so you,
So that's per the direction last meeting. That was going to be for the commission to consider at this meeting.
okay.
Today, Commissioner Gupta has provided this additional information this afternoon that we wanted to provide to the full commission on, which talks about each of the work plan, but as I understand it, quotes back to timestamps that support the work plan topics, which is atypical from what we do in our normal minutes. Our normal minutes go through the summary as the meeting as it goes through. It doesn't call back support documents or support quotes related to the work plan. So this is a little bit different than what we would normally do for our minutes.
And just to be clear, I'm not proposing that we include that document in our minutes. This document is just a comment from me,
Okay.
just to support the proposed amendment for our minutes.
Okay, so we can vote to support the minutes with no changes.
I don't believe that's correct. I believe what staff has done, and if staff could correct me if I'm wrong about this, is they've given us the original minutes and the proposal that we discussed last month, and we still have to vote those in. But please correct me if I'm wrong about that.
That's correct, but I also think that's what the chair is referencing as well. The chair, if I am understanding the chair correctly, is saying, can we, the commission, vote on the minutes as published in tonight's agenda? And the minutes as published in tonight's agenda include the amended summary that Commissioner Gupta, you're referencing. So I think both things are true.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, so then I'd like a motion to, oh, you want to speak? Go ahead. I see other people.
May I just ask a quick question? Like, in the minutes, like, I think minutes are valuable when they accurately recount what has actually been said, and that was the direction you gave Kylie last week, or last month, apologies. I'm happy to pass the minutes. I have no disagreement with this work plan summary. I have a question about the appropriateness of a after the fact summary instead of a representation of what was said. So I think it's actually a more fundamental question about what is a minute, what's the purpose of minutes, and if instead we were to adopt this as part of the work plan itself, would that be a more appropriate place for it?
Isn't this our minutes that staff provided? No.
Read that a little bit further into me. What, the summary or
So
the?
I have packet pages 1 through whatever, right?
Yep.
Staff prepared this last.
So Ustav prepared this last month and staff put it into the minutes
Correct, at the direction of the commission.
at the direction of the commission
For
Right.
consideration to add into the minutes.
for consideration. So we could
Correct.
either approve this with this or approve it without this.
That is correct.
Okay.
And if I believe, if I'm understanding Commissioner Motter correctly, I think you're asking what is the appropriateness of the inclusion of this summary in a minutes item versus in an alternative. You are correct. The intention of minutes is that more, not quite a transcript, obviously, but somewhere between a transcript and simple action minutes that summarizes the conversations that occur. So it is perhaps abnormal to include something like this, but ultimately it is the commission's, at the commission's discretion. You could approach it either way.
All right. Commissioner Tucker, you have your light on?
If I could just ask Commissioner Gupta, to summarize briefly, what is the change? What does all this say?
All it does is summarize in a minutes format the steps that we took with respect to our work plan. So it's not a transcript. The provided extra document is just in case you have questions as to the backing of that, and it provides a transcript for that if you have those questions. But it's just to correctly summarize what we did with each item in our work plan.
So you touch on several work plan items. You're not focused on one particular action step. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a choice. We can include Commissioner Gupta's packet pages 44 and 45, or not include them. Do we have a motion?
I'll motion to approve the minutes with the amendment.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Chair Scharf,
Yes.
the Kaylee Burton Utilities Administrative Assistant here. Commissioner Metz did have a couple of amendments. Did you want a chance to make those, or I can state them for you?
Yeah, I would like to make them, but we should.
Let's
probably
deal with this
finish-
first and then
finish
we.
This topic.
So the
first.
question on the table is really, do we want to include this in the minutes or not? And that's the motion. No, it's page 44 and page 45. It's just the 2 pages of 44 and 45. All right. We have a motion. Any comments on that? Nope.
Well, I'd like to make a brief comment. I mean, we discussed that at the meeting, so I think it should be in the minutes.
All right. You want to call the roll?
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Scharf,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater,
Yes.
Commissioner Gupta.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Now, Commissioner Metz, you had some amendments.
Well, I had a question now. What are we doing with the 9-pager?
This?
Yes.
This is nothing. This is public comment.
I see, okay. Yes, okay, then I had 2 proposed amendments. What would be the best way to do that? Should I read them referring to the packet page, or would you like to read what I sent? What would be the most efficient way?
So the
to
most
do it?
helpful thing would be for you to tell me on which packet page, what you want changed. So I can look at the packet page and say, okay,
Okay, packet page 33, 4th paragraph from the bottom, which starts Commissioner Metz as one of the authors. The end of that paragraph said he wanted to explicitly consider the option of inaudible, and I want to change that to option of a tie-in that is connected elsewhere than the transmission line along the bay where CPAU currently ties it.
would anyone have a problem with adding that? Seeing nothing, we're just going to add it. Okay. What's the next one?
Okay. Packet page 38, 4th paragraph. And this is talking about the gas strategy. And it says he considered it to be a small part of 2 other topics. And the correction is that he recommended that it not be relegated to be a small part of 2 other topics.
Anyone have any concerns with making that change? Seeing none, we'll make that change.
Okay.
Anyone, any other things?
That's it.
All right. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes as amended. Commissioner Mauter makes that motion. I need a second.
Second?
Okay. You want to call the roll?
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Scharf,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater,
Yes.
Commissioner Gupta.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Great. Now we have the utility director's report.
So I will simply say, good evening, Kylie Nose, Assistant City Manager. I will introduce the UAC to their new Utilities Director, Alan Curtori.
Great, thank you very much.
Congratulations,
So-
Alan.
Yes, so I get to switch chairs, so I'm very pleased with that move. I'm going to give a very brief highlight of some of the items that went to council. So on May 12th, The city council had a study session on some of the SCAP uses of potential funds for low carbon fuel standards, the electric and natural gas cap and trade, and the public benefit funds. No actions were taken. This was informal sessions with city council. So I wanted to mention that to the commission. Also on May 19th, there was a contract with Anderson Pacific Engineering. This is for the wastewater treatment plant, the advanced water purification system. It's about a $47 million contract to improve the water quality of recycled water, which will benefit the city of Palo Alto and Mountain View on our recycled water quality to our customers. Also on May 27th, there was a professional service agreement with Franklin Energy Services LLC, and that was to do a turnkey home electrification program for advanced single-family electrification funded through gas cap and trade reserves. And this is one of the SCAP, Sustainability Climate Action Plan goals and objectives to have this program move forward. In addition, I just wanted to mention, I did attend a data center meeting at the city of Santa Clara. They did a study session with their planning commission on the large amount of data centers and growth within their city. As you may recall, they are one of the largest, have the largest amount of data centers, actually 55 discrete data centers in their city limits. So they're going through the impact of that, what that does to rates, how it impacts the connection fees. It was a study session that started at 7 o'clock and ended nearly at 11. So it was very detailed. I can provide links if the commission would find necessary to look at that at their leisure. It was a 85-page PowerPoint presentation. And spoiler alert, Palo Alto was mentioned on a couple of those slides. So if the commission would, I'm sure you'll find those as well. Also, some really great news on May 22nd, the California ISO at the Board of Governors meeting approved the 2024-2025 transmission plan, which included the new transmission line for the city of Palo Alto. That would connect basically to PG&E's switching station within our city limits to a substation in Mountain View at the NASA Ames substation. So that's a new transmission corridor coming to Palo Alto. It's been a long-term goal. I did want to mention that our city manager actually spoke at that meeting in support of this. So we really appreciate his time on that. And in reference to that, it's the cost estimate for the project was between $42 and $84 million. That is going to be partially paid by Palo Alto as part of our transmission access charges, and it's also charged throughout PG&E service territory and frankly, Northern California as well. So it's a regional transmission project that benefits directly on Palo Alto, and it reflects our electrification, some of our growth we have in our own data centers here and technology centers in Palo Alto. So we're extremely pleased with that. So when is that going to be, come to Palo Alto? The estimate is 2034. There is some discussions on how can we move that faster. So we are going to be in discussions with PG&E on that. And is there other maintenance projects that could be fast tracked such that this project can move forward? It is on an existing transmission corridor that PG&E has, which is that they would reconductor with a higher voltage 115 kV line. So just want to give you an
Why
update
does
on
it take so long? I mean, I'm sure there's a good reason, but why? 9 years is a long time. I mean,
So transmission projects in California are challenging. This is actually a very quick in terms of the approval process. They do have to do engineering evaluation of the existing towers. They have to go out and contract for this work. There are improvements they have to make, and not only their switching station, but also the substation over at NASA Ames. So there's work that has to be performed at those locations to accommodate the new 115 kV line. And we will also be making, as part of our grid modernization, improvements to our own Colorado receiving station to accept this new power as well. So that goes into our planning process. In terms of California process, this is a very good outcome, and to include it in this project now is actually is pretty quick in that time frame. I also want to mention that the CPUC did on behalf of the federal DOT did a audit of our natural gas distribution system. They conducted a survey on site, on-prem from May 12th to May 23rd. It was a very comprehensive review. Palo Alto came very favorably through that review process. We got compliments from the CPUC on the preparation of our staff, the availability, and all the good work that we were doing. So they have done some preliminary notes that actually goes to the federal government for them to evaluate, and then they'll provide some findings. We did not find any recommendations that were potential notice of violation to that effect. So we're very pleased with that, and it shows all the good work that staff has been doing to maintain the system. So we're very pleased and wanted to convey that to the commission. On a more ceremonial event, the Tower Well Park is going to be dedicated to Fred Irely. It's located on the corner of Alma Street. So it's that original concrete storage facility, the first one for the utilities. So former Mayor Irely was a council member for 8 years, mayor in 1982, and was the first UAC chair in 1991. So there's a lot of history there. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. And the dedication is on June 18th from 4 to 5 p.m. And Chair Scharf, there's an opportunity for you to speak if you would like at the event.
What day is that?
June 18th from 4 to 5 as the UAC chair. So I just want to provide that update. There's a few other Palo Alto workshops that I won't go onto on the Palo Alto website, but I can answer any questions you may have on that update. Thank you.
Commissioner Tucker, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. I have several questions about the second transmission line, and none of them are urgent. I think we'll have time by 2034. But we talked about R&R. I think it's on the agenda. Can you put your microphone on? Oh, there's so many buttons to remember. We talk about the second transmission line. I'm sorry, we talk about reliability and resiliency next month. And my question is whether this folds into that bigger topic so we can learn more or talk more about the transmission line next month. Is that part of R&R?
So I actually would probably put that under grid modernization in terms of the efforts in looking in terms of the expansion of the distribution system in terms of capacity, and also looking at our substation. So I'd rather bring that back as part of that update in terms of what we're doing on the distribution system, our substations, our sub-transmission.
Okay.
In terms of that progress, I think that'd probably be a better location for it.
Then could I simply ask, what's new this month compared to when we briefly talked on the same topic last month? It sounds like Cal ISO made a decision.
Correct. They authorized the project. So the report I gave last month was that they were agendizing it, and today I'm providing the update that they approved the project as part of the larger plan for the Cal ISO, which includes our project. So that means it is a green light to move forward, and there's a commit from Cal ISO to move forward.
Commissioner Croft.
Thanks. I had a question on the data center study session that you went to, and I'm just curious to learn how data centers might affect our load through the day. Did they talk? I mean, you said that one of the discussions was how it impacts rates. So I'd kind of be interested in also load characteristics.
Yes. So they're, from my past experience, a very flat and stable load. So they're wonderful in terms of their demand charge and energy. So they're pretty ideal in terms of infrastructure. What I wanted to mention is that as part of your work plan, there was, as you recall, a specific question on our data center competitiveness. So I wanted to ensure that the commission, that we're doing that outreach, looking at how it's affecting our neighboring utilities, learning their best practices, how it's permitted, how it's approved, everything from architectural to, green energy in terms of the commitments. So I just wanted to give an update of the flavor of research that we're doing, and we can provide information to the commission.
Thanks.
Commissioner Gupta.
Thank you. Thank you for the updates. Very exciting about the second transmission line for Palo Alto. I think that's very important for our resiliency and reliability efforts. And also great updates on your learnings from data centers. Very excited to see the presentation and learn more. I did have some questions about other updates. Do you know where we are in city government with respect to the subsidy for gas rates from our cap and trade reserve? Is that going to be before Finance Committee or City Council? And do we have an idea when that might be?
Yes, that's going in front of City Council as part of the rate increase on June 16th. So that will be a presentation in terms of council on the potential opportunity to use some of those gas cap and trade monies as a one-time for the G2 customers. So that was the direction that we received from the Finance Committee.
Okay, and as far as I understand, has the amount changed since we last discussed it here at UAC? I think we discussed 1.2 million. Go ahead.
Yes, the actual report is a one-time I think it's $1.1 million, which is the assumption of us completing a potential updated cost of service study, which will be coming back to the UAC for additional input to finalize that report.
Okay, great. And then I had a second question on fiber. So I had heard at our Finance Committee meeting that just happened yesterday that there may be some permitting delays on the fiber hut at the Colorado substation. I was wondering if we had an update on that and what are the issues involved in our ETA?
So that meeting was, I think it was yesterday,
Yeah.
in terms of that update. So there is, as folks may recall or know, that the Colorado substation is in the floodplain. So there was an issue in terms of keeping the height of the fiber hut outside the floodplain. So there was an increase that we're being looked at right now, and that's causing some delays in terms of the installation of the fiber hut. I don't have an update basically from yesterday on what that status looks like. But we can bring some information back on the overall timing and scheduling of it.
Awesome, thank you. And then I just had a final question on an item I noticed and that we had discussed earlier, but I figured it'd be great to repeat that discussion in front of the body because I thought it was great information you had provided on the 3 consulting contracts that are before the City Council's consent calendar, I believe on June 9th. These are the 3 professional service contracts with Empirical Services, Burns and McDonnell, Western Enterprises, and Transformer Consulting Services in an aggregated amount of, I think, 15 million to 25 million over a 3-year period for electric engineering consulting services. Could you describe what that is and the purposes for it?
Yes, so typically what we provide is we have a certain capacity of internal staff that can do a lot of the distribution work. As we ramp up to do these major capital projects, such as Grid Mod, which is around $300 million. And it's a series of projects, not only in our distribution system, but also in upgrading our key substations, which are 50 to 70-year-old equipment. We use specialized consulting services, design services for that support. So we did an RFP, frankly, last year, have gone through a robust selection process in concert with our administrative services department and have come up with 3 consultants to serve some of those needs in terms of that consulting services. So they will do a myriad of technical engineering work associated with that, with the grid modernization. So this is typical on what we do in terms of hiring specialized consultants for this work. And it's frankly no different in the industry and pretty standardized process.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to new business. Do we have a presentation for item number 2? The wildfire mitigation plan?
Yes, I want to introduce Terry Crowley. He's our Assistant Director of Electric on our engineering and operations, and he'll provide an update to our annual wildfire mitigation plan.
Good evening, Chair Scharf and commissioners. What I have for you tonight is a utility wildfire mitigation plan. The intent of this plan is to mitigate wildfires that are caused by utilities. So this is more of a proactive look at how we operate the utility and what we can do in areas that are prone to wildfire to reduce that risk of utility caused wildfire. Next slide, please. So as a little bit of a background, after the 2017, 2019 fires in Northern California, legislation was put into place that requires all utilities, investor-owned utilities, as well as publicly owned utilities to develop a wildfire mitigation plan and file that annually with the Wildfire Advisory Safety Board. The wildfire mitigation plan seeks to lessen the risk of utility wildfire utility caused wildfires by evaluating several key operational procedures, metrics, and the replacement of utility equipment that is prone to cause wildfires. The current budget for wildfire mitigation is projected to be $15.1 million. Largely, this is for the Foothills Undergrounding Project. Through the end of this fiscal year, we're expecting to expend $11.6 million. So a very significant investment for the city to mitigate wildfires, but a worthy effort as this is a very heavy risk to the public and a huge liability for utilities. The wildfire mitigation plans, again, they must be updated annually. They must be presented in a public meeting such as this meeting tonight. And then presented to the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board before July 1st of each year. Next slide, please. So in the legislation, it includes several key components. They're listed here on this slide. I won't go through all of them, but I will pick out a few of the key ones here. And so Section D, key performance metrics. So identifying what the utility can measure to say, what are we doing to move forward on an annual basis to mitigate wildfire or reduce that risk. F is disabling reclosing or looking at your system protection devices to see how you can trip those circuits faster and not reclose to induce additional energy into those vegetated fuels and start fires, as well as looking at PSPS events, how you would de-energize those lines ahead of a weather event, communicating to those customers what those criteria are to further mitigate the risk of wildfire. And then again, customer notification procedures, very important in this because this is very proactive and we would need to outreach to the customers and let them know what would be happening during certain weather events. Next slide, please. So the high fire threat district in general is the lands west of Highway 280, runs into the foothills. There's a little bit of wooded and grassland areas. Generally aligns with the wildland urban interfaces, but these are the areas that are more prone to utility caused wildfires or wildfires in general. And this is where the utility has more sensitivity to that causing those fires. And this is where we focus in on the utility operations and equipment that we have in those areas. Next slide, please. So, key performance metrics for 2025. So vegetation management, obviously trimming trees, removing that vegetation, keeping a proper line clearance is very important. So over 8,000 trees were trimmed over the past year. Infrastructure maintenance. So we do a lot of visual inspections, detail inspections, intrusive inspections throughout the year. This gives us a sense of what the needs to be repaired in our system, but also the health of the system. Very important to preventing wildfire and weathering weather events without the risk of equipment failures. Project status, so the Foothills Undergrounding Project, roughly 80% complete. This is moving forward. Notably, there's several staff on the city that have put a hard focus on this project to move it forward. And then another key metric is, have we caused fires? And so to date, the city has not caused a wildfire from its equipment. Another key metric is how many times are there down lines within the wildfire area. Last year, there was no wires down within the wildfire area. Outages in the higher fire threat district, that's another metric that we can track to see what the risk is, what the level of equipment failures are, what the exposures are. And there were 2 in the last year. One was due to a car pole accident. It's the third party influence. It's nothing that the city can largely prevent. The other one was an equipment failure for an overhead transformer. So again, some of those outages would be mitigated with the undergrounding project. So there will be some help there as far as lowering that risk. Next slide, please. So also listed in the wildfire mitigation plan is the accomplishments that were completed in calendar year 2024. So again, the Foothill Mitigation Project, that is a major ongoing project with a huge benefit to mitigating wildfire. So 4 miles roughly of line has been completed. Includes substructures, underground cable, pad-mount equipment. Again, this is a very high focus for staff to complete this project as soon as possible. Along with the undergrounding, additional facilities were put in place for fiber optics to extend it into the foothill area. This strengthens communication to several critical facilities, the reservoirs in the area. And then also completed all the visual detail inspections, intrusive inspections, pole testing throughout the year, and completed vegetation inspections. Next slide, please. So looking forward to calendar year 2025, current goals for the wildfire mitigation plan is to complete the project in the foothills. There's roughly 10,000 feet that an easement it was just gained to allow us to realign the equipment that goes up there. And we'll move forward with installing the substructure and installing the cable this summer. A lot of the work that we want to do is we want to complete the de-energizing and removing of the overhead line. So a lot of the line, roughly 40,000 feet of it has been de-energized and new underground has been placed into service. But those overhead lines are still in place. While they're de-energized, it reduces the risk, but we still need to go and do that cleanup work. But the focus was to get everything cut over as soon as possible. It may take some time to go in there because obviously during wildfire season, we don't want to necessarily be up there doing additional work that we don't need to do because it may cause a risk of starting wildfires. Review and update policies and procedures. So again, looking at public safety power shutoffs, what the criteria is, understanding that we have a bunch of new equipment up there. So the criteria that we had is probably no longer applicable. And also looking at the customer outreach and communication leading up to those types of events. And then again, CAL FIRE has released new local responsible area maps where they feel that there is elevated risk for wildfire. Those maps extend further into the city's boundaries, extend past Highway 208 to the east side of it. And so we'll review those maps and see what facilities lie in those areas and what mitigation measures would be appropriate and put a work plan forward on that. Next slide, please. So with that brief presentation, I would turn it over to the commission for any questions or dialogue they'd like to.
Thank you for that presentation. Let's first move to public comment. Is there any public comment?
If any member of the public would like to speak on item number 2, please raise your hand or press *9 now. No hands raised.
All right, and no one in the audience. All right, Commissioner Croft.
Thank you for that presentation. I just came across a company that was doing, aerial, determination of risk from overhead brush over lines, and they claim that 80% of utility costs are clearing trees away from lines. And I'm just wondering, with this undergrounding project, will this result in cost reduction for us? And I'm wondering what kind of brush removal we will continue to have to do once this is complete. Like, are we done with that kind of work, or are there still areas? And then where our responsibility ends with the lines, do they end at the property line, or do they include the property line?
So with the investment of undergrounding, you will have a reduction in vegetation. You still have the rest of the city that has a large urban forest that needs to be managed as well. So there will still be vegetation management needs, and there will still be costs related to that. But in the wildfire areas, that will be significantly reduced, which is a positive. I can't speak to what that percentage of savings would be right now, but there will be something that's measurable with that. Typically, the demarcation point between the utility and the customer is the meter itself. So we would still maintain all of that. As far as the undergrounding system goes, we still need to do a visual patrol each year. Every 3 years, we do a detailed inspection of the undergrounding equipment. And those pad mounted transformers and other pad mounted equipment, we still need to clear the vegetation around those. So we would still have some small brush removal.
Got it. And I can't recall this, but is the line undergrounded all the way to the meter for all these customers?
So we've made a change in the past few weeks that we are planning to actually underground all the way to the meter and make sure
Okay.
that all of the overhead as well, the high voltage overhead, as well as the low voltage secondary overhead is also undergrounded. So we're going to work towards that. And the goal is to have that finished by the end of this year.
Awesome. And then the other question related to that is everything updated so we don't need to do grid mod in that section?
We are planning for the future, and we are installing additional capacity and enough capacity that would anticipate grid mod. There's not a lot of customers up there, but what we're installing will accommodate future electrification.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Gupta?
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I found it very informative. I just had a few questions. As part of our vegetation management, I noticed we've trimmed 8,000 or more trees in these high-risk areas. And this might sound like a funny question, but it is kind of serious. A resident recently complained to me that when contractors are coming out to trim trees in her yard, which apparently has several of these redwoods or other tall trees, that the contractors are just lopping off the tops of the trees. So I was curious, are there processes in place to manage contractors and standards we have in terms of protecting trees? Do we have arborists that help assist with determinations on how to safely and more attractively trim trees, especially if they're in residence property?
Yeah, so it's always difficult to trim trees around lines, and there is, aesthetic concern there. There's also the health of the tree, right? If a tree is directly underneath a power line, there's not really a way to allow that tree to grow healthily around the power lines. So they would typically lop that off. If the tree is off to the side, they're going to cut a notch out of that tree to maintain that clearance. And the city does have an arborist. The tree crews that the city hired do also have an arborist, and so they understand what the health of the tree is required there. And there's a balance between the health of the tree, the aesthetics, as well as this public safety that tree trimming provides. So there is certainly a concern for the health of the tree, as well as balancing that against the public safety that's necessary for that tree trimming.
Awesome, thank you. I also had a question about the advanced distribution management system that may be planned. And it seems like it's a great system to help aid our reliability and resiliency efforts. I am wondering if this is something that we're planning to include in next month's presentation on reliability and resiliency, or if that topic might be coming back to UAC in the future.
I would imagine that topic would come back to the UAC in the future.
Awesome, thank you. Oh, and one final question. I know myself and other commissioners may have submitted comments about the OES plan as part of the public comment period. Has OES reached out to utilities since early May concerning the OES plan, concerning that feedback? So
obviously, OES works collectively with all the departments within the city. And so the electric department and the utilities department is part of that. So there is some work there. This plan that we're presenting tonight is a preventative plan. So we're proactively trying to reduce the risk of starting wildfire. It's not necessarily a reaction plan. So if there is a wildfire, what's our resiliency plan? What's our business continuity plan? What are we storing for emergency supplies? What's our mutual aid agreements? So it doesn't necessarily go into that. So this plan is really focused on the proactive. Let's not start the wildfire. And those other plans, yes, there is collaboration within the city to manage that reactive portion of our needs. But there's a little bit of a separation and nuance between these two plans.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gupta, so yes, the departments were involved with OES in terms of the update to the emergency operations plan, and we, as a utility, provided comments to that as well. So our internal comments actually were before it went out to the public.
Oh, thank you.
Commissioner Metz?
Yes, I'd like to make two comments. First of all, just like to commend everybody involved for the hard work and preparation that went into this plan and of course, all the work behind it. Seems like a huge accomplishment to get all this stuff done. And all the non-happenings that you talked about are really important. Also wanted to build on Commissioner Gupta's comment. On packet page 66, where it talks about 2025 goals for emergency preparedness. One of them is cooperation, as we just talked about, in the city's emergency operations plan. One thing I think that's really important that's not done in that plan, there's an emergency services council that's established by city municipal code. But CPAU is not a member of that council. And I think it's really important that CPAU be a member because of the technical expertise that you folks have that no one else has in the city and capabilities that the utility has. So I'd appreciate if you take that under consideration. I think that's an important omission in the EOP.
I'll take that under consideration.
Commissioner Tucker?
Thank you. Good report. Thanks very much. Just two or three really simple, I think, basic questions. When we say when we refer to the underground project in the foothills, is it as straightforward as saying we basically won't see overhead electrical wires anymore on Arrest or Darrow and, you know, up Page Mill Road and so forth? Is that the case? Is it that simple?
So city-owned utilities will be underground. PG&E will still have overhead lines in the area. The phone companies will still have overhead lines in the area, but the city will be undergrounding its facilities as well as installing the fiber line underground. So that will mitigate the city's risk to causing wildfires, but PG&E will still have its overhead lines there.
On that one, I'm out there in the foothills a lot, riding on a bicycle. With those, there's sort of I think they're high voltage, like mega transmission lines that come over Russian Ridge and they go across Palo Alto property, or city area, like the Palo Alto, I think it's Golf Club or something like that, Palo Alto Hills. Those are all PG&E, right?
The transmission lines in the areas would be PG&E's. As well as there's other wood pole distribution lines in the area.
Are you familiar? I don't know, is it fair to call those high voltage, or are you all familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so there are high voltage lines out there. There are also a separate service, and maybe a part of this meeting I can look at the transmission system, but there's also some federal lines that go through there to serve Stanford.
Critical?
So federal lines that go to serve Stanford. That's their source of supply, a 230 line. So when you look up in those foothills, you may see different lines that are not PG&E's as well.
Thank you. And then last question to Commissioner Gupta's point about the anecdote with a woman's property. Is all tree trimming in Palo Alto done by the utility, or do we have two separate tree trimming forces? Maybe the city has one that has nothing to do with the utility. I just don't know.
So my understanding is that the city inside the Public Works Department has an urban forest department, right? And there's an internal city crew that can trim trees, but all of the high voltage tree trimming is generally farmed out. It's contracted out because of the volume of the work. And so that would be, you know, a contractor doing that work, but any street trees in the downtown area, that would be something that's different and outside the utilities.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mauder?
Sorry, Commissioner Mauder, just one quick note, Commissioner Tucker, it is one tree trimming contract that's used citywide. However, they do different services based on the needs of, say, utilities or public works.
Are you looking for us to move an acceptance of this? I apologize, I can't remember.
The intent is to approve the wildfire mitigation plan so that we direct staff to file it with the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board.
May I please move both to accept the wildfire mitigation plan and to direct staff toward implementation.
Second.
All right, you want to call the roll?
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Sharp,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater,
Yes.
Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
motion carries 6-0.
All right. Now we're on to resolutions amending the amended and restated water supply agreement between
Yes,
the
so-
city and county of San Francisco and Palo Alto.
So Carla Daly, the Assistant Director of Utilities Resource Management, will give the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Scharf and Commissioners. Carla Daly, Assistant Director. I am here this evening to talk to you about a couple of proposed amendments to our water supply agreement with San Francisco Public Utilities Commission and a new and updated Tier 2 drought allocation implementation plan. Next slide, please. So I'll be taking these pieces one by one in this presentation, but just wanted to show a little diagram on how they're all tied together. There are two different amendments proposed to the water supply agreement. And as I said, within BOSCA Tier 2 allocation update, and I'll go into more detail on what these mean. But just want to emphasize that although I'll be talking about them piece by piece, they really come to you as a package that resulted from almost 3 years of negotiations between the 26 BOSCA agencies and some concessions by the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission agreeing to these water supply agreement amendments. Next slide, please. So first, starting with the water supply agreement, this is an agreement that dates back to 2009. It was a result of a 1984 settlement agreement, and it does a few key things. It governs the water supply that comes from San Francisco to the wholesale customers. It defines the allocation of how the costs are divided between San Francisco's retail customers and the wholesale customers. And that also includes a minimum purchase requirement, which is this topic of one of the proposed amendments that I'll get into in more detail in a minute. Thirdly, it provides a method for allocating water in times of water supply shortages. And that is subdivided into two different plans. The Tier 1 plan, which allocates water between San Francisco and all the wholesale customers, and the Tier 2 plan, which in the WSA is stated that the wholesale customers have the opportunity to come up with our own plan on how that water is allocated among the 26 of us. BOSCA, as you may remember, it has an administrative role in all of this, but is not a party to the contract. Next slide, please. So first, I'm going to talk about the first proposed amendment to the WSA, which modifies the minimum purchase requirement. Next slide, please. So this requirement was and is intended to ensure that wholesale customers that can shift their demand to other non-SFPUC water supply sources don't radically shift those purchases away from the system, because that leaves more costs for the remaining customers to pick up. It applies to four agencies: Mountain View, Milpitas, Sunnyvale, and ACWD. The MPQs, or minimum purchase quantities, were assigned in 1984 in the settlement agreement, and they were last adjusted as part of the 2009 water supply agreement. The minimum purchase quantity requirement does not apply during a drought. So when the SFPUC declares a water supply shortage, those are waived automatically for obvious reasons. We're being asked to reduce our take on the system, and so those are suspended during those time periods. Next slide, please. So there are three components to the proposed amendment regarding this particular aspect of the water supply agreement. The first is a reset of those minimum purchase quantities, given it's been a long time since they have been reset and times have changed and water use has gone down across the region. The MPQs will be set at 80% of actual use during the previous 4 non-drought years. And there will be an opportunity after 10 years for reviewing those MPQs with the possibility of an additional downward adjustment should that be warranted. The second change is a 1-year drought rebound. Right now, the way the contract is written, the next year after SFPUC lifts a water shortage emergency, MPQs bounce back to their full levels. And as we're all aware, after a drought and after customers have reduced water use significantly, it takes some time for sales to recover. And so this amendment allows for a transition year between the end of a water shortage emergency and when those MPQs are back up to their full level. The third aspect of this change is what we're calling the family plan, which I think is hopefully a useful term to help explain what this is. And it says that if the 4 agencies who have this requirement collectively meet that requirement, then none of them will be charged penalties. And so that just gives them a little more flexibility to, among the 4 of them, meet this requirement. Next slide, please. So because, because these agencies have been paying penalties, and frankly, the city of Mountain View over the past few years has paid more than $11 million in penalties, water that they could not use and had to pay for. If they're not paying those penalties, then those costs get spread out among the rest of us. And while this is, not an exact science on how that would all shake out, the analysis that was done estimate that this would cost all 26 BOSCA agencies and notably the retail customers of San Francisco around 0.007 cents to 0.04 cents per CCF, or in other words, a cost increase of about 0.13 to 0.72%. There are a couple things that we took under consideration in this negotiation, and one is that this does remove a disincentive for those MPQ agencies, and particularly our close neighbor and our partner in the Regional Water Quality Control Plant, to continue to put their, for their council to support alternative water supply development. They have, their council has allocated a lot of money to expand their recycled water system. They have a lot of development down on East Bayshore near where the recycled water pipeline is. There's a really obvious opportunity for them to expand that recycled water use given their customer base and where that line is. And this is a good thing for us as another partner and operator in the plant. It helps meet some of the environmental discharge requirements. It also, goes some way, it doesn't solve all potential need for alternative water supplies on the system, but to the extent that individual agencies are spending money on alternative water supplies, it could delay or diminish slightly the need for something regional, which all of us would pay for. And I guess just thirdly, it really ensures that our neighbors are not charged for unused water. And again, Mountain View paying $11 million for water they couldn't use is not a great thing. Next slide, please. So the second amendment to the water supply agreement is regarding the Tier 1 allocation plan. Next slide, please. So just again, as a review, and during a water supply shortage, there are these two different plans that are applied. The first one is the Tier 1 plan, which divides water between San Francisco's retail customers and all of the BOSCA agencies. And then the Tier 2 plan, which I'll talk about in a minute, allocates that water among the BOSCA agencies. Tier 1 and Tier 2 plans only apply during declared water supply shortages and only up to system-wide shortages of 20%. Any shortage that is greater than 20% is a new negotiation. Everyone has to come back to the table and figure out how to divide up this water. So it is limited to those situations. Excess use charges also are only applied during mandatory shortage emergencies. So when we are in situations where the SFPUC might be saying, hey, we've had a couple of dry years, we're asking for some voluntary water use reductions, then these excess use charges would not apply. And during those times where the official emergency is in place, wholesale customers are able to transfer shortage allocations and do some deals among themselves and with San Francisco's retail customers. Next slide, please. So the new element that has been agreed to by the SFPUC is another family plan, different from the first one, but equally impactful. And that says that in a mandatory cutback, if we, the BOSCA agencies, collectively are under our water supply allocation as designated by the SFPUC, then none of us are charged an excess use fee. If we are not collectively under that allocation, then we're back to status quo, which is the agencies that are over their allocations would be charged those excess fees. So this is really kind of a win-win for the BOSCA agencies and was a concession by the SFPUC. Next slide, please. The third component of this negotiated package is an update to the Tier 2 drought allocation implementation plan. Next slide, please. And once again, this is the dividing up of water among the BOSCA agencies that is allowed to be negotiated under the water supply agreement. The current formula expired in 2019. The BOSCA board has approved a series of one-year extensions while patiently waiting for this negotiation to play out. And if this were not negotiated by the staff and adopted by all of our 26 individual councils, the BOSCA board would be the default decision maker. And I would add, if the BOSCA board could not come to an agreement, then San Francisco would decide the allocation for us. Next slide, please. So the way that the negotiation unfolded was to back up all the way to what are the policy principles that we all could agree on and want to be applied to this implementation plan should we find ourselves in a water supply shortage situation. And these are the four policy principles: making sure that we have enough water for basic health and safety, minimizing the economic impacts, providing predictability, and recognizing and avoiding disincentives for developing alternative water supply projects and efficiency in all of our agencies. Next slide, please. So the result of the plan, or the result of the implementation plan, is a new formula. And Palo Alto, really because we have more outdoor use than some other agencies, and because of those policy principles and health and safety being the very first step that needs to be accomplished, does experience a slightly higher cutback under this new formula. And because we have a water shortage contingency plan where we have stages in these 10% water reduction blocks. The new formula does not result in any different actions that we would be asking our customers to take in a water supply shortage situation. So for example, for a wholesale customer cutback of 20%, under the old formula, that would have resulted in 16% for Palo Alto. Under the new formula, it's 18%. But our stage 2, which includes measures such as no application of potable water to driveways and sidewalks prohibited, that covers a stage from 11% to 20%. So from our customer's standpoint, they would not see any difference between the old formula and the new formula. Likewise, for a 25% wholesale customer cutback. And I might just point out the reason that we chose these two numbers, and that may be confusing, given I said this only applies for a 20% system-wide shortage, is that in a shortage, because San Francisco has so little outdoor use in their service territory, the wholesale customer cutback as a whole is higher than San Francisco's retail customer cutback. So a 15% system-wide cutback is about 20% for the wholesale customers. A 20% cutback, which is that maximum regional shortage that this formula would apply to, is a 25% cutback for the wholesale customers. And so that's why we're showing these two numbers. Next slide, please. So our recommendation is that the Utilities Advisory Commission recommend to council these two amendments to the water supply agreement and the Tier 2 drought response implementation plan. And I would like to mention as well that the water supply agreement is, the way it works is that all 26 of us have the exact same agreement, and that any change to that agreement has to be approved by all 26 agencies or it does not happen. So this is, we are very much tied to our other 25 wholesale customer brethren in this negotiated package. And I'm available to answer any questions.
Let's first go to the public.
If any member of the public would like to speak on item number 3, please raise your hand or press *9 on your phone now. We do have 2 in-person comments. Peter D.
Welcome back.
Good to be back. Peter Dreckmeyer, Tuolumne River Trust. I want to encourage you to continue this item until your next meeting. There's no rush. The goal for Bosca is to have this agreement in place by the end of the year, 7 months from now. If you approve it tonight, I think it's probably unlikely that Bosca will take up SFPUC's letter next week. If you continue this item, I think it's much more likely that they will take it up, and it'll be a favor to everybody. Also, you know, the Tier 2, I don't think is ever really going to be necessary. Back in the teens, we had a big drought, and the governor stepped in and said, here's what you got to do, and it superseded the whole WSA. In 2021, the SFPUC declared a water shortage emergency when they had 4.5 years worth of water in storage. And Dave always points out to me, it's like, well, that was just in storage. They're going to pick up water each year. So there's, you know, you could have a seven more years of extreme drought and we're not going to run out of water. And that's a real problem with the water supply agreement, is that the SFPUC determines when there's a water shortage emergency. Can you imagine them coming to Palo Alto and saying, hey, we only have 4.5 years worth of water in storage. We think we need this emergency. It ended up costing them $25 million in lost sales because people were using less water. It probably cost Palo Alto as well. Bosca is embarking on something called Strategy 2050. It's a long-term reliable water supply strategy, which could be a great product. It costs $2.5 million. Palo Alto's share of that is $193 million. What I've been encouraging them is you got to start with the question, how much water might we realistically need? The questions that you all asked of the SFPUC. And then you make a plan. Otherwise, they follow the same path as Palo Alto. You invest a bunch of money and turns out you don't really need the plan. They did one of these plans back in the teens. It cost over $2 million. Didn't result in any new water. Fortunately, we didn't invest in a lot of alternative water supplies that we wouldn't need. The reason why we're addressing this minimum purchase requirement is because water demand is so far down. Mountain View is using way less water than they used to. So times have changed, and yet the design drought has remained the same. Never adopted by the SFPUC. I commented on that in my letter. So what we're trying to do is say, hey, let's have some discussions about these things so we could make wise investments. And the City of Palo Alto is taking the lead. It would be a huge favor to Bosca if we got that information, because that gives them a huge head start on this Strategy 2050. They have a lot of real information that they can base decisions on. So again, there's no rush for this. I encourage you to continue it, and everything is going to work out great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dave W.
Thank you. So the letter from the SFPUC to Councilmember Stone is quite exceptional. I just have a hard time actually reading this. It states, there are no calculations on the return period of the design drought, as a return period has no relevance to the need to plan for a drought worse than any we have experienced. I just find this absurd. They're saying we don't need to understand the risk of various drought scenarios. If we don't understand the risk of various drought scenarios, how do we know how much of alternative water supplies we need? And you know, in that amendment, it says they're assuming they're spending 290 some odd million. So it just seems to me the questions Councilmember Stone asked were very appropriate. And then the letter goes on to say, and this just seems a little bit rude, but we're not willing to, and I'm just paraphrasing, this is not exactly what it says, but it says something to the effect of, we're not willing to respond to an individual elected official. Well, so as you may know, Councilmember Stone brought this up at the last Bosca meeting. The Bosca meeting, they said, well, let's have the policy committee consider this. And so right now, next Thursday, a week from tomorrow, there's a policy committee meeting. And that's why Mr. Dreckmeyer is suggesting, why don't we wait until after we see what happens at that policy committee meeting before we decide to approve this WSA. And I think from a cost perspective, understanding the risk is so important to managing our costs. And as we know, our water rates are already very high. I think that's everything I had. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
We do have one more. Tom, if you would like to speak.
Hi, Tom Smagel. I'm the new CEO and General Manager of Bosca. Thank you for having me today. I just wanted to clarify one item from what Mr. Dreckmeyer said. Mountain View is going to be billed for the extra water that they are not using as of July 1st. It's a fiscal year basis. And so Bosca is trying to get all agencies to approve the water supply amendment and a tier 2 plan as soon as possible. I know that some are drifting a little bit later than that July 1st. And in fact, I know Palo Alto is going to have a difficult time getting it on the council agenda before September or October, just because of the summer break that commissions and council takes. But by no means should we be anticipating that the end of the year is the target for Bosca. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, returning to the commission. Commissioner Tucker.
I just have one question up front, and I may ask to come back with a few more, but on Mountain View, since you mentioned it, Director Daly, and you did, thank you for coming, Mr. Smagel. I hope I say that right. Could you just tell a little more about Mountain View? They're paying for water they could not use, and yet they also are perfect for, it sounds like, recycled and alternate water. Why are they paying for, I know we're in Palo Alto and Mountain View is not our purview, so forgive me, but it seems related. why are they paying for water they don't use? Do they have other water sources? Is this connected to the problem we've discussed here many times for months, that there's a tendency to over-predict or forecast demand? That's by SFPUC, not Mountain View, I realize, but why is this happening? Is it that they're drawing from other sources?
So, right, they are one of the 4 agencies in the agreement that have this requirement to take a minimum amount of water. And it is because they are connected to Valley Water's system. And so in theory, they have an alternative water supply. They actually take very, very little water from Valley Water. They pump a little bit of groundwater for a small part of their territory. The minimum quantities were set at a time when they were using much, much more water. Now they're using much less. So that is why they're paying for water they don't use, because it's a take or pay provision in the contract. And the reason that they are investing in recycled water is because they have a dedicated council to sustainability and they believe in that water supply. So despite the fact that they're paying these penalties, they're also still moving forward with their investments in recycled water.
Wow. Would you see, well, enough said. Thank you very much.
Do you have other questions you know that you may want to ask them now?
I'll ask them later. Thank you.
You may not get called on. Commissioner Lou. Oh, Lou, Commissioner Gupta.
I know I'm on Councilmember Lou's seat.
You are. Commissioner Gupta.
Which I'll have to connect with him on later. Thank you so much for the presentation and for bringing this forward to us. So I took some time to really try to understand this. I read the staff report really closely, including their recitals and the proposed amendments. And I support a lot of it, but I also have a lot of concerns. And in many ways, I think this would have been better coming to us first as an informational item for discussion and then for a vote. And I do support just tabling this until we get more information on some of the prior requests that we had made from SFPUC. As a commission, we wrote a whole One Water letter to the council. We wrote a list of questions on the design drought and on alternative water planning. It would seem odd to me not to wait to at least get some information that we had requested, and it seems SFPUC has not provided that information, and it seems that in just a week, Bosco will be meeting to discuss how to get that information from SFPUC, which I think is highly pertinent to this. And the reason why I think it is highly pertinent to this is if you read the staff report, and I'm starting here on page 6 of the staff report, under analysis and the amendments to the water supply agreement, as was presented, this is about minimum purchase requirements and loosening those for those 4 agencies. And part of the rationale for this are, and I'm quoting here, change conditions, including recurring droughts, improved water use efficiency, and investments in local supplies, which have reduced demand on RWS. The minimum purchase customers are well positioned to develop their own local drought resilient supplies, which would reduce the regional dry year supply gap, improving reliability of the RWS for all users. These amendments may reduce a perceived existing disincentive to improve efficiency and develop alternative supplies. So it seems to me that one of the foundational aspects of this agreement is to incentivize alternative water supplies. And this falls back to our One Water discussion, where we do not yet have the data from SFPUC on what should we be planning for. Do we need to be planning for alternative water supplies? To what extent do we need to be making those investments? And if you move forward to the actual recitals, and these are the recitals starting on package page 99. Bullet point AA. With its alternative water supply program, the SFPUC is in the early stages of planning for projects that to support the wholesale and retail customers' ability to respond to climate change and address future water supply challenges and vulnerabilities. The original minimum purchase customers are particularly well suited to develop local drought resilient supplies, which improve the reliability of the San Francisco regional water supply system for all users. And if you carry along to each subsequent bullet, CC all the way to JJ, it actually lists the millions to hundreds of millions of dollars local water agencies are now investing in alternative water supplies. And again, that carries right back to our One Water conversation, where we were looking at potentially investing hundreds of millions of dollars in alternative water supplies without adequate data. And that is why we pushed so hard to get a letter out to council, and that Councilmember Stone, as our BOSCA representative, asked SFPUC, and we're at a place where SFPUC has denied providing us that information, and BOSCA is going to be meeting next week to ask for that information. So I say we wait until we get that information and until we have a better understanding of this. And I do have other concerns around this and questions about what this means for Palo Altans. But I think as a foundational matter, that is essential. So I do move to table this discussion to our July meeting.
We'll come back to you. I want to see if anyone else wants to speak.
Oh, sure.
Before we make a motion.
Thank you.
Commissioner Matter.
Thank you. Carla, thank you very much for representing Palo Alto, and also to the many other BOSCA members that participated in these discussions. I think it's a real testament to both the desire of Palo Alto to be a good citizen and participant in our regional water supply, and also to think strategically about the value of alternative water supplies as a complement to our wonderful Hetch Hetchy supply system. One of the things that I want to emphasize for the commission and the public is that alternative water supplies come in many flavors. Fit for purpose water treatment and reuse that we saw in the proposal for the Palo Alto One Water supply is actually quite distinct from the non-potable supply systems that are often serving many of these other customers. So I think it's worth differentiating between alternative water supply projects where we are seeking to produce potable water, often at very high cost, and other projects that are instead producing non-potable water, often at significantly lower cost than we can ever achieve through a direct potable reuse or indirect potable reuse project. So I just want to make sure that that is both well understood by the commission and well understood by the public. I think that that is really the basis for a lot of this sort of assertion that there are benefits, there are system-wide benefits of these communities pursuing alternative water supplies. So I think that's a really important point to make. I also think that it's really important to differentiate between our long-standing efforts to negotiate this agreement and the more recent concerns that this commission and potentially other BOSCA members are hoping to bring to SFPUC. There is, from my perspective, not a lot of value in holding hostage this agreement in service of trying to extract additional information from SFPUC. I understand that we would like SFPUC to respond. I also understand that in order to do so, just like it was more effective for our commission to present a unified letter than was brought by Greer Stone, it is also of great value for the BOSCA members to unite and bring that letter to SFPUC. Holding our fellow members hostage over this agreement seems like it would in fact do the opposite. It may actually engender frustration of our commission and ultimately of our city if we do not support an agreement that was negotiated over a 3-year period. I also believe that SFPUC is ultimately the arbiter should this agreement not pass. And so effectively, we would be handing them a victory if we were not to pass this agreement that our members have independently negotiated.
So with that, I encourage this commission to act on this agreement in a timely manner. I do not think that it is realistic that additional information or a delay is going to yield the outcome that we seek. And I think it is in our best interest to move forward in a prompt manner.
All right, I see no other lights. I do have one other light. Commissioner Tucker.
Thank you. I'll be brief and simply say that I concur with the points made by Utsav, by Commissioner Gupta, that there is not the urgency to make this decision. We can be totally supportive. We're holding nothing in hostage vis-a-vis other BOSCA members, but and we have until the end of the year. There's no reason that Palo Alto needs to be the first in the parade, or I don't know quite how many of the 26 members have signed to approve this. But this is about also signaling to BOSCA how important it is that, from at least one commissioner's point of view, we get BOSCA-wide support for getting answers from SFPUC on these important things. I've heard the argument that there's little linkage between the WSA that's in front of us today and the request for information from SFPUC, and I couldn't disagree more. It's written all over the briefing materials, and it's in the recitals, as Commissioner Gupta pointed out. There are $293 million to be spent. A share of that will fall to Palo Alto. I don't know how much, but if you do a simple math, like 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 falls to BOSCA. I think Palo Alto's 8% of that. So we're talking, just implied in the $290 million, there's somewhere between 15, 20 million that perhaps will fall to us. And, we don't even know, I don't even know, and it's not in the package, what comprises the 293 million, what projects are in there. We've seen presentations before where things like Los Vaqueros Dam improvement is on in the plan, but I think that's fallen out. I see some looks of confusion, but my basic point is we can wait. This can be tabled. It doesn't antagonize our fellow BOSCA members because there's plenty of time, and we do need responses from SFPUC.
Commissioner Metz.
Thank you. I had a somewhat narrower question. I understood the comments about Mountain View and why this be in their advantage and so on, but I don't understand why Palo Alto would want it. In other words, if you look at page 7 of the presentation, this would increase our cost a little bit. It's a small number, but it would increase our cost a bit. And page 14 says it would reduce our allocation, again, a small number, but it would reduce our allocation in a drought. So why would we vote in favor of that?
Thank you. That's a fair question. Again, this is a package, 3 components that have been negotiated over a 3-year period among 26 individual agencies. And the de minimis extra cost is justified because it does alleviate millions of dollars being paid by our neighbor Mountain View and our partner in the plant for water that they're unable to use. And, that helps them move forward with their recycled water expansion, which their council has already committed to. That helps keep nutrients out of the bay. So particularly for Palo Alto, because of our close ties to Mountain View, I would say Palo Alto has more of an incentive to want to solve this problem than some of the other BOSCA agencies. But as a collective group, we all recognize that this is problematic. We are a region, and our fellow agencies paying for water they can't use is not a great situation to be in. And San Francisco has agreed to this already. Their commission approved these WSA amendments at their May 13th meeting. And it was, there are purely concessions for SFPUC in this agreement, the tier 1 plan and the adjusting of the minimum purchase requirement.
If I could also add, so understanding, full disclosure, I used to work for the city of Mountain View on their utility side, so I'm familiar with their system as well as Milpitas and Sunnyvale's on a just knowing recycled water system. It is true that these are marginal cost expansions for those cities. They've already invested into these non-potable systems. They typically talk to developers to expand those systems. And by using recycled water as an alternative supply that they've been using for decades, it reduces the amount of potential water they're taking from SFPUC, which reduces the water coming from Hetch Hetchy, potable water for other uses. So that is a net benefit, environmental and otherwise, to the customer base as well. The other question that has come up is in terms of those entities, Alameda, Milpitas, Sunnyvale, Mountain View also have connections to the Santa Clara Valley Water District. Full disclosure, I used to work for Santa Clara Valley Water District in a former life. So the district also has their rates proposed, and they are doing significant investments on their system for their Anderson Dam and others. So their rates are also increasing, actually at a rate projected higher than SFPUC. So the use of recycled water, having our partners investing in those systems at those marginal cost does provide value for the customers as a whole, because that also decreases potentially the need for recycle or need of SFPUC water for, frankly, irrigation.
Thank you. So it encourages others in Bosca to make investments that are in our interest to boil it down, right?
Correct. The regional investments for the area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Can I just clarify that those regional investments are much cheaper than Palo Alto investing in the types of marginal water supplies that we saw in the One Water report? I just want to make that very clear.
Commissioner Croft.
Yeah, so I have to say, I'm not 100% clear on what all this behind the scenes talk is about the Bosca meeting that's coming up. It wasn't in the packet. I don't believe it was in the public comments that were submitted. I saw the letters submitted. So it's new to me that there's this meeting coming up. My understanding is that the negotiation has gone on for 3 years, that an agreement has been reached. And I guess my question is, at this upcoming meeting next week, who are we expecting to advocate holding whose feet to the fire? I mean, I assume we're assuming Bosca is going to ask SFPUC hard questions after the negotiation has already been done. I mean, I'm kind of at a loss for knowing who would be advocating for what at this meeting and why that would actually motivate us to want to hold this up. To me, it seems like a fair agreement. I am in support of the documents that have been submitted to us and the negotiation that's been completed. And I am not at all up to speed on why we would want to hold this up. So if anyone from staff or Bosca would like to comment on that, I'm open to hearing it.
I assume staff does not believe we should hold the agreement up and that there is no reason to do that. Is that a correct assumption?
That is correct.
Okay. I assume the representative from Bosca feels the same way. Go ahead.
Just to be in the microphone, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think I wanted to address this a little bit. I first of all would associate my comments with Commissioner Mauder, and Commissioner Croft. I think I appreciate former Mayor Druckmeyer's suggestion, but I think it's to the wrong body. The role of the UAC is not to play politics. It's not to decide to try and hold up some agreement on leverage. First of all, I think it's silly. If anyone wants to exert leverage, that's the role of our council. That's the role of Bosca. That's the role of Commissioner Stone. We have no leverage. Our role is simply to advise council. And if you feel this is a good agreement, and it doesn't have to be a perfect agreement, is the agreement we have. 26 agencies have negotiated it. You know, whenever you do negotiations, what is the best alternative? I believe the best alternative is to recommend that council agrees to this. It seems like a worse alternative if this falls apart and the SFPUC, as Commissioner Mauder made the point, makes the decision rather than the agencies together. So for me, it's a no-brainer to say, yes, we should go ahead and approve it tonight. But, so that's my comments on that. Now, Commissioner Gupta did say he wanted to make a motion. I'm going to let him make his motion. Make your motion.
Sure, I move to table this agreement, discussion of the agreement to next month's meeting. And it's not just because of the Bosca meeting. It's also because I don't think as a commission, we have each fully grokked this highly important and permanent change we are making to our regional water supply agreements. I think there are lots of questions we should be asking. This is a matter of first impression for this body, but this contract and the changes we're making, letting go of minimum purchase quantities and reassessing them based on the actual usage of these 4 customers, actually introduces a lot of liability to Palo Altans potentially in the decades to come. It's not a free thing that we're discussing. And it's something that I don't think folks have read. It's something that I think we each should actually read the recitals and the amendments that are proposed and fully understand them before voting to approve this. The deadline to approving this is December 31st of this year. I believe we are among the first agencies of discussing this out of 26. There is no rush doing this. So I do move to table this to next month's meeting so we have a chance to really grok this and fulfill our responsibility as a commission.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one piece of information. Bosca can correct me, but I think most agencies are seeking to approve the amendments and the tier 2 allocation before the end of the fiscal year. And the reason, and because they go straight to their councils. We go to the UAC, then we go to the finance committee, then we go to the council. We have a summer break in the middle. That's why we're here right now, but most agencies are planning to take this to their councils in June for final approval.
So the next thing, do we have a second for Commissioner Gupta's motion? Okay.
Yeah, I'll second it. And I do so because I think it, if it sends any signal at all, it sends a signal to other Bosca members who may be considering if, that they too should be thinking about the transparency or lack thereof from SFPUC.
Okay. I will now make a substitute motion that we approve this. And what was the motion up on the thing you wanted?
Would you mind putting the motion back up, please?
Okay, I will make that motion. The Utilities Advisory Commission recommends council approve 2 resolutions amending the amended and restated water supply agreement between the City of County of San Francisco and wholesale customers in Alameda County, San Mateo County, and Santa Clara County, and approving an updated Tier 2 drought response implementation plan. Do I have a second for the substitute motion?
I'll second that.
Can you now call the roll on the substitute motion?
Point of order.
Yes.
There was a motion that was seconded.
Yes, the substitute motion supersedes the motion that was made.
Is that true? Is that in a rule book somewhere?
That's how it works.
Commissioner Metz?
The motion, let me just clarify, the motion.
That's the motion.
that's pending is that one?
Yes.
No.
Commissioner Tucker,
No.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Scharf,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater. Yes. Commissioner Gupta,
No.
split vote of 3 and 3.
So the motion fails on a 3-3 vote. Now we go back to the original motion, which was to table it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the effect of that would be that that there is no recommendation from the UAC if you table it. Is that what you're trying to achieve?
No, I just want to table it to the next meeting.
So that's not tabling it. So what you're asking for is that the motion be brought back, that this item be brought back at the next meeting. Is that something staff is capable of doing or not?
Chair, I think actually it would be, the item would be continued until
Right,
the
it's
next
an item to
meeting.
be continued.
Thank you.
So would you, can you continue it to the next meeting or not?
So we're looking at the rolling calendar and the priorities that we would have. We have a series of items. One is primary is the COSA for the gas, which is, we need to keep that on schedule as we're intending to finalize that by the end of this calendar year. We also have 2 large power purchase agreements that we'll be bringing forth for the UAC to opine on as well. So that would push off as a lower priority, the reliability and resiliency strategic plan update. So there are timelines established also on the SCAP committee. So that would be the item that would be the lowest of the priorities that could shift out to another month. However, that might not provide the UAC to provide information to the SCAP, given their schedule as well. So I just wanted to provide that for the commission to consider.
And this will be going to the finance committee anyway, right?
Correct.
Okay. So your motion is to have them bring this back on the next meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Chair,
Yes, you can discuss it.
is it understood what data would need to come back at whatever meeting?
I don't
before-
think there is any data. I think it's purely trying to hold it hostage in some misguided attempt over the next meeting.
I would just echo that sentiment and more generally say that we were given the packet to read in advance of this meeting. My understanding is that we read the packet. We've also benefited from Carla's presentation, and it is not clear to me how to be continuing this does anything other than seek to provide some leverage. If there's additional information that people need, you've said that we need to grok the, terms. I have read them and am voting to support them. You have read them. I think and trust that my fellow commissioners have also read them. So I think it's important for us to reflect on exactly what that to be continued motion would support.
Commissioner Croft.
Yeah, I mean, just to further discuss this, I'd like to know for those of you who voted to bring this back, what your personal intentions are on, will you be attending the BOSCA meeting? Will you be asking questions? Will you be holding their feet to the fire? Why, I mean, if we simply delay this, who are we relying on to follow through to achieve the objectives that you're looking for? So to just pause it without any concurrent action to get what we want, I don't see the point of that. So I'd like to understand what the goal is. or what the actions are by the people who want to hold this up. And are we all relying on our public speakers to speak on behalf of those of you who object? I'd like to know what the plan is.
All right, Commissioner Metz and then Commissioner Gupta.
I would say Commissioner Gupta. Actually, I was going to ask basically the question that Commissioner Mauder asked, which is, you know, what is going to be different a month from now?
Commissioner Gupta.
Sure. So, I mean, said another way, what is the rush to approving this? Why are we in a rush to approve this when we're among the first of 26 agencies looking at this? It's a matter of first impression before our body. It's a big change to regional water supply. It will have a cost component to Palo Altans now, and it will have a cost component to Palo Altans in the future as other agencies begin to reduce their water purchases from SFPUC. We talked about that cycle during our One Water discussion. As folks purchase less water from SFPUC, there are system costs to maintaining our Hetch Hetchy water supply. That means the cost to Palo Altans to purchase Hetch Hetchy water from SFPUC may increase. I'm not certain that we understand fully the effects of making these changes. This is a big change to this agreement. It's not just because we haven't gotten information from SFPUC, which I think is a part of it, but it's also because we don't fully understand yet, I think, what is the impact going to be on Palo Altans? Who are the people we serve? We serve Palo Alto. So yes, we want to be good regional partners. We want to be good regional citizens. But if it's, for example, have we done a sensitivity analysis moving into the future? If regional partners reduce their water supply purchases from SFPUC and Hetch Hetchy, have we done that sensitivity analysis to understand what the cost impact for Palo Altans might be in the next 20 years? And this is a question for staff.
So, you know, the changes to this agreement, I guess I wouldn't characterize as huge personally. And these changes to minimum purchase quantities apply just to those 4 agencies who have been paying penalties for water that they literally cannot use. Their total system demand is less than their minimum purchase quantity. This has been a 3-year negotiation built upon those policy principles that we all agreed on. And so it is not, you know, yes, we have been involved in those negotiations, and we have represented Palo Alto to the best of our ability and participated in those negotiations in a faithful way. But it is not up to Palo Alto right now to decide what is or isn't in this final negotiated agreement with these 3 linked together components, the 2 WSA modifications and the Tier 2 new allocation plan.
But that wasn't my question. My question was, have we done the analysis on our end to understand some of the impacts to Palo Altans? For example, a sensitivity analysis on the cost to Palo Altans moving in the future.
Yes, the cost is in slide, whichever number that is, 7. And the impacts of the change in Tier 2 are also highlighted on the slide that shows our water shortage contingency plan actions and the negligible impact on our customers.
And have we done a forward-looking assessment as agencies begin incorporating alternative water supplies, what the cost to Palo Altans might be?
So the cost impact is what you see on slide 7, and that is forward-looking.
So so for example, the agreement changes how minimum purchases by these 4 agencies are calculated based on their actual usage. Is that correct?
Based on the average usage of the last 4 non-drought years.
Right. So as average usage, so let's say this is just a hypothetical, right, going into the future. And this is what I'm mostly concerned about. Every 4 years, right, as these 4 agencies introduce alternative water supplies and their usage goes down. Isn't it true in that hypothetical that the minimum purchase that they would be required to spend would go down because their average supply, their average purchase of that supply over 4 years would have gone down?
I might look to Danielle to help me here, but this does look forward, and this is on the margins. They're not going to be out developing gigantic alternative water supply projects. This is a good example, Mountain View serving, yeah, I'll have Danielle speak to that. Do you want to jump up?
So this is a one-time reset until 10 years from now when it might be reset again. So any additional investments in lowering water use, whether it's conservation programs or other local water supplies, those aren't going to be they're not going to affect the minimum purchase quantity for these 4 agencies until the next go round in 10 years.
Okay.
So that's in 2035. What I would say is that you are subject to the whim of the other 21 agencies right now, and they are subject to the whim of Palo Alto as well. So to the extent that any of those agencies use less water or more water, it can affect the rates because it's a very fixed cost system.
Thank you.
So
I also have a follow-up question on the 293 million that SFPUC is spending. Do we know what share of that is attributable to Palo Alto?
I didn't know what that was.
I'm not sure what that number is.
It's in the recitals. That's recital II on package page 101. It states,
Our staffer, Danielle McPherson, can potentially address that.
oh, thank you.
So.
Commissioner Gupta, can I get that page number again,
Oh,
please?
sure. That's packet page 101.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Sorry, both Danielle and I are a little hobbled today. Apologies for hopping around here. I do see that recital. San Francisco has a very large budget. That is over a 10-year period, roughly $30 million a year, which is not a very big part of their budget, focused on planning for water supply projects. That could be projects within the system itself to maintain and improve the system itself, whether it's continuation of the water system improvement program or other projects like that. It could be the alternative water supply program, but it's a very small amount if it is, because they don't have very many active projects working in that area.
Sorry, Commissioner Maurer. Commissioner Tucker.
So Rachel, Commissioner Croft asked good questions, and what are we going to do? What are we expecting? And I, for one, am willing to attend next Wednesday's BOSCA meeting. I just looked up, it's a time I could do. If that's what the commission wants, or the commission could choose someone else to attend, I can go with questions and comments of my own, or take those that the commission wants to send. So perfectly willing to To do that, I've attended Bosca 2 meetings, board meetings in the past, just as an observer, and would go again. So with Altwater, I think I've said it already, but Altwater, whether we use the $293 million that is in the recital, or simply point to the fact that multiple times in the recital, but also in the briefing, Altwater is offered as a reason to approve this and to recommend this plan, and to recommend this amendment. And so the linkage seems clear, and enough said.
Commissioner Metz. You don't have your light on? Oh, somehow I had your light on. Commissioner Matter.
Just to clarify, I think getting facts established is really important. I think that the premise for Altwater is, we seem to have named it something that sounds evil. It's not. It's a really valuable way to secure water supplies and reduce water costs because these alternative water supplies have lower marginal costs than big new capital infrastructure projects. Most of the alternative water supply sources that are being discussed either for enhanced use or potential expansion are very low marginal cost projects. We saw very high marginal cost and quite frankly, just completely unrealistic projects in that one water supply plan. Okay. I have not yet heard anything that we are asking of staff to come back with. And in the absence of coming back with something, we are just doing this to hold up a decision in service of seeking leverage. But I just want to clarify that. I know you've asked for sensitivity analysis. It seems like your question on sensitivity analysis has been addressed.
No.
So what additional information are you seeking that would inform and help you vote in favor of this?
I think the information that we requested about the design drought at SFPUC would assist me. And I think that is information we've asked. I think we need to have a fundamental understanding of what is the actual water supply situation for our regional water supply. I mean, it's very clear. The report that we have talks about how this agreement.
I hear, thank you for answering my question. I think that we are at risk of conflating our role as an advisory council with our role as with staff's role as technical experts in and council's role participant in a very complex negotiation. We are at risk of becoming an irrelevant body if we have assumed such an outsized set of responsibilities.
You know, I'm going to quickly jump in. I think we have to be really clear on what our role is. Whether or not we support this or not tonight, it's not that if we support it, it's not that we've approved it. Council's not approving this till September. So I don't quite see how us not approving this has any effect on Bosca, has any effect on anything else. All it does is it makes, and we may not even be able to get to it. I mean, it's going to come back next week, something else. If we do that, if we vote to support this, and I'm not going to vote to support it coming back next week, and I'm not convinced there are 4 votes here to do that. But we'll see. So I guess where we will end up on this is either Commissioner Metz will change his vote. I don't see Commissioner Tucker changing his vote, or Commissioner Uston, or Commissioner Croft or Mauter will vote to go ahead and have this come back to us next month. I will point out that if it comes back to us next month, we will have no more information next month. That will come back to us. Yeah, we do. The staff is not doing any work on it to come back. So that's
Please
why.
use
there's
your
no-
mics, Council.
So that's why,
Commissioners.
there is no, I don't think there'll be any more information that'll make any difference on this. I don't think, so you can make the call that you think that SFPUC in the next 30 days before it comes back to us will give us information on the design drought. And you can believe that that'll make a difference. That, first of all, I don't think they'll do it. And if they do it, what difference will it make? Mayor Lowing.
I was just going to say procedurally, in case everyone's not aware of this, if this motion to table fails, you can send a 3-3 vote to council and it will proceed in the normal channels. It will come across that way as a 3-3 vote instead of a 4-3 or a 7-0 or whatever. But that's a way to move it along tonight.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And that's what I'm thinking. So anyway, let's take a vote unless anyone else wants to. Oh, do you?
Just to clarify, I was trying to understand what the mayor is saying. So that means if this just goes forward as is, it still goes to the finance committee and city council, right?
With no recommendation from the UAC, basically.
Right.
Basically, it's 3 to come back to the UAC and 3 to approve. And council can do whatever they want with that.
And it is certainly not unprecedented. That happens from all commissions.
Well, so far, just to be clear, so far we've had a push, or we didn't pass the recommendation to move it forward, right? And now we're voting on a recommendation to revisit at our next meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct. All right. Commissioner Croft.
Okay, is there the opportunity to put commentary with our split vote to ride along with this as it goes to council? I'm wondering
I'll tell
if,
you what we could do. We could have yourself go to council, or Commissioner Mauer, whoever wants to, and represent the 3-3. And then we could have, I don't mind if it's Woodstock, Commissioner, or Tucker or Metz, you guys could decide. And then you both could give your speech to council about why the UAC split on this and what the difference is. That would be fine.
I think the split per se, considering that most UAC votes are 7-0, says a lot. So I think that by itself could be enough.
well, I will go back to my point before, which is when we vote not to approve something without a messenger explaining why they didn't vote for it, that seems useless to me. So I would say, I am not changing my opinion. I would have vote to approve it. But those of you who vote to pause it, I would want that the message of why you're not approving it to be communicated somehow to anyone who can make a difference, right? So if it's Councilmember Burt to go with a strong hand to the Bosca meeting, that would be something that you would want to communicate sooner rather than later, I assume, since the meeting's next week. But I think just voting a split vote with no communication as to why doesn't make sense at all.
You want to say something else?
Just to be clear, it's UAC's advisory to city council. It is Councilmember Greer Stone. Sorry. So I just wanted to correct that for the record. And also when this motion gets voted on, I just wanted to clarify that there is no action or activities that staff is expecting to provide to bring this back as if it's continued.
All right. I'm a little confused. I'm not sure why all the lights are on again. I have no idea what order they came on. They just are all on. So, okay. So quickly,
Ch-
1 minute or less. Commissioner Gupta.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to address to Finance Committee and to Council in public comment the reasons for why we wished to have continued and that resulted in the 3-3 vote. If this vote to continue it does not move forward.
Commissioner Tukin.
Yeah, just as a response to Megan, Vice Chair Mauder, you know, we talk about getting, well, you mentioned possible irrelevance of the commission. Simply to say yes to a proposed agreement amendment that's, no matter how long it's been negotiated and how painstaking, there's not a lot of value to that. I, for one, am not going to vote to support an amendment that has to do with water, that has to do with the SFPUC, that is explicitly linked to alt water spending. And I understand that so not all alt water drips the same and costs the same, but without at least using the opportunity to message, not to the world, but if to no one else, then to the council and also to Bosca, that Palo Alto is not going to say yes to everything coming from SFPUC. I don't use the words hold hostage, but I can see why you'd say that. But I don't hear any alternative from this body as to what we're going to do about the affront that comes from SFPUC blowing off the letter from our council that we painstakingly helped to draft.
Commissioner Metz.
No comment. I mean, I think it's a good idea.
You did put your light on, right? I'm not.
I did.
I did
You know,
actually without him looking.
There's no feedback on the light thing here, so, and I'm just a learner, I guess, on that. But I do think it's valuable to have folks from UAC explain their positions to council. I'm less convinced that it's useful for us to revisit it.
Okay. All right.
Can I make one quick clarification?
Go ahead.
These amendments before us are not coming from the SFPUC. These are, this is a package that the 26 Bosca agencies negotiated together, and SFPUC actually made concessions and agreed to those. So I just want to make that clarification.
Thank you. I was incorrect. I do know that, and I misspoke. I did listen to your multiple references to the word concession and didn't quite always get it. It is always SFPUC that gets to declare thou shalt have drought. I mean, it's SFPUC's decision without any basis or, as I understand it, pre-documented guidelines to simply say when we are in shortage, when we are in drought, when these things apply and when they don't. But yeah, you're right. This doesn't go directly to SFPUC, but Bosca hears us, and we most need Bosca and the 26 members to know that they deserve answers from their supplier.
All right. Are we prepared to vote on Commissioner Ustaf's motion? You want to call the roll?
Commissioner Metz,
No, I don't see any point in further discussing this.
Commissioner Tucker,
I've lost the thread. What is this the motion that was on the screen?
Commissioner
Nope.
Gupta's
This is
motion.
Commissioner
Oh, to continue.
to continue.
Yes, I vote to support continuing.
Commissioner Croft,
No.
Chair Scharf,
No.
Vice Chair Mater, no. Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
motion fails with 2-4.
All right. Assuming there are no other motions. Unless Commissioner Metz has a motion. I mean, other than that, I see no other motions. So,
I really didn't push the button.
no, I know you didn't.
Sure. So I think folks are wondering what's happening procedurally after this point.
So
And
after this point, I think it just doesn't come back to the UAC.
No.
That's correct.
That the UAC has made a 3-3 vote. Commissioner Croft is going to go, or Commissioner Mauder, I think you two are going to work it out. One of you is going to go and explain it when it comes to council. Or, or the finance committee, whatever.
It's my understanding, well, I'm voting to approve it.
Yes,
And I think that shows with my vote.
I guess that speaks for itself.
And to me, it speaks for itself. I feel like those who did not support it should speak for themselves on why they did not support it. The others of us, I don't know why we need to explain it.
That's fair. So then Commissioner Gupta is going to go and explain, I guess.
So just to be clear, obviously commissioners are able to express their individual opinions at any of the public meetings or public agenda items. It sounds like
It's
that
not a
is,
3-3 vote, so it's, yeah, so.
so what
It's not a 3-3 split.
it is a 3-3 split,
No, it's not. He voted not to support the motion.
correct?
Commissioner Metz, so it's
Of
4-2.
No, we could resurface the motion.
One, Mike, Commissioner Motter. Two, where you're at right now is you have a 4-2 vote to not continue this item.
Correct.
You have a 3-3 vote to recommend council approval of
Yes.
this item.
That's correct.
And so that record is what will be transmitted to the Finance Committee at their meeting in August. At that point, obviously, as a public item, any commissioner has the authority to, and obviously opportunity as a member of the public to express their personal views. Since there is not a, generalized consensus, I do think, to chair and vice chair, your point of the original vote was 3-3. Perhaps it is the commissioner's choice whether or not Commissioner Gupta are representing all three of the votes that said no versus your individual. At this moment, you would be representing your individual perspective.
Is it procedurally possible to re-propose the original motion?
It is,
Yes.
but the only one that can do that is Commissioner Metz. Because you're the only one that voted against it. And for a motion for reconsideration, you need someone who voted the other way because they're reconsidering, so they're changing their vote. So you're the one who could do that. I mean, obviously Commissioner Tucker could. Yes, Commissioner Tucker could change his mind. Commissioner Gupta could change his mind. I'm just trying to be a little more realistic here.
I'm also unclear why it's the no votes who have leeway to explain their points of view to council, and the yes votes speak for themselves. Not that I'm suggesting anyone need attend, but the reasons to say no are as multiple as the reasons to say yes.
I'd be happy to represent the three no votes if that's what the three.
So I don't think you can do that.
Oh, I can't. Okay. So
I guess my concern is that the no vote was like, no, we're not doing this because we had replaced this with it was a substitute motion. But I just want to make sure that anyway, whatever. I'm not gonna.
I think the answer is you could each go speak individually. Yes.
Yeah, this isn't really that complicated. You're just tied on a vote. And if, I know you've talked at one time or another of having a routine liaison come to council, as for example, the planning commissioner does. They rotate it monthly. And so in that case, because it's fact and protocol, whoever's on that month would speak to the whole issue, plus and minus, as one individual. So that's sort of the general protocol that's in place right now. And that person doesn't represent either side of the motion, depending on either how she or he voted, just to explain sort of both sides of the motion. So if there was going to be any presentation to council besides just the vote, that would be the way to go.
Can I ask a question on the procedure? So for the planning commission, do they discuss in their meetings how it will be presented, or is it assumed that the person who's coming is going to
The latter.
adequately
Yeah.
summarize?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because if council members had unlimited time, they would listen to this whole agenda item tonight and see what happened. And a lot of us do go and see what the votes were and what some of the comments were. But just for convenience, the PTCs for controversial items are giving comments, not generally beyond that.
Okay.
So finishing at 3-3 is fine.
All right. I think that brings us to the next item.
Could we take a short bio break?
Yes.
That's okay.
Yes. Why don't we come back in 5 minutes? going to reconvene. Does staff want to start the presentation for the item
Yeah.
number 3?
Yes, I just wanted to introduce Lisa Belair, our Senior Resource Planner, and just tee this up. So just want to remind the commission that we did have 2 budget subcommittee meetings with the commissioners. The last was on May 21st, which was a day before the packet went out. So staff has been updating the PowerPoint presentation. We do appreciate some of the commissioners providing some questions in regards to that, and we're hoping we can address a lot of those as part of the presentation today. So without further delay, Ms. Blair.
Thank you so much. And I also want to mention we have Jim Stack and Shiva Swaminathan available. They're senior resource planners, and they may respond to some of the questions. So this is a presentation that is going to provide first a recap of some of the information that we brought to the commission in December of 2024 on the topic of electric time of use rates. And we're going to I'm going to move quickly through those background slides, but we have updated the information from those December slides so you can see how things have changed from then to now. And if you can go to the next slide, please. So, and then we're going to talk about, so let me just go through some of the key changes and then we'll skip over those slides and you can ask any questions you have about them. But the 4 main key changes that I wanted to bring to your attention is that in December, we were talking about an implementation rate for time of use rates, opt-in voluntary time of use rates of July 1st, 2025. And we're actually recommending to push that back and now recommending January 1st, 2026. This is going to allow us the time to bring this item to the Finance Committee and to the Council and get those rates prepared to go into effect January 1st. We are proposing also a phased approach. So when we start this rate in January 2026, we would initially limit enrollment in order to make sure that our operations and billings are correct and make sure that the customers that enroll have a good experience and everything goes smoothly. This will be a opt-in voluntary program. In December, we mentioned something about time of use for all residential customers planned in 2027. And currently we do not have that plan anymore. We're just talking about a voluntary program. I also wanted to provide a brief update on the AMI installations for residential electric customers. The estimate is 95% by the end of by December 2025. When we came to you in December, we were estimating 100% by the end of 2025. There are some complex remaining meters, the 5% that may take a little bit longer. So the focus of the discussion tonight is on introducing the rates that we've developed through a supplement to the cost of service study and really talking about the design of those rates and bringing those forward for council adoption. I also wanted to point out that we plan to bring to the UAC in October an implementation plan. So we may defer to that discussion some more of the questions about how we're going to get the word out about this and what our implementation and communication strategies are. Next slide, please. So I'm actually going to skip through slide 3 through 6. These are the same slides that we brought to you in December for members of the commission and the public to be able to follow along the discussion. And on the slides, we've updated the information so you can see the most updated information. So this slide shows our residential time of use rates and some information about our time of use rates. As I mentioned, this is going to be effective January 1st, 2026. And one of the benefits of the time of use rates for residential customers is that we are going to get some information and data on their demands and their costs, and we'll be able to refine the rates in the future with that information. This voluntary opt-in program will not yet be available to net energy metering customers. We are going to be prepared to offer that to net energy metering customers once we work through some billing constraints. And so one of the goals of the time of use rate design is to provide accurate price signals to customers and to reflect the cost of electricity at the time that the electricity is being used. And additionally, one of the benefits of the time of use rates is that the customers will have the opportunity to benefit from those lower cost time periods, as well as to utilize lower carbon intensity during the off-peak time period. I want to talk a little bit about how we develop these rates. As I mentioned, this is a supplement to the cost of service study that we completed in 2024. This is work that was completed earlier this year. So this is a study that's in the packet tonight that has a date of April 2025. And this is designed for a rate that utilizes the same revenue requirement from the cost of service study. And so we took that cost of service study revenue requirement, assumed that customers did not change their usage patterns, and then designed a revenue requirement that would recover the same amount of revenue. If customers use more or less, then those marginal costs of electricity will be reflected in the rate, the time of use rate that the customer pays for, and they will experience those higher or lower costs. And the utility will be neutral to those increases or decreases. Next slide, please. In order to set those rates, and particularly to set the time periods, we consider 4 main factors. And the next 3 slides cover the factor 1, 2, and 3. So the marginal cost of energy is the first one. And this reflects the hourly market prices on the wholesale market. And the highest price periods occur in the evening because the lower cost solar energy is not available in those evening hours. The second factor is and I'm going to show you a chart of that in just a moment. Just the distribution system capacity and peak demand is the second factor that we took into account. And we looked at the timing of the total system peak demand and found that across all the customer classes, the peak is between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. We also looked at the residential peak demand, and I have a chart of that also in a moment. And based upon our evaluation of the residential peak demand, we found that that also falls within the time period between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. So both of those pieces of information support that peak period between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. We also looked at the greenhouse gas intensity or the carbon content of the electricity, and we have a heat map that we'll show you in just a minute. And we found that, and I'll talk about that when we're looking at the chart, I think, but basically that information supports a super off-peak period during the middle of the day where the carbon intensity is the lowest. So that's what we're recommending. And the best practices in rate making, this is referring to if you make the time of use peak period particularly long, then it makes it hard for customers to actually shift their usage outside that time period. So we're looking for the right time period, and we're recommending that 5-hour time period. Next slide, please. So this is the chart that I mentioned of the marginal cost of electricity that Palo Alto faces. And you can see the 2 lines. One is for the summer. The black line is for the summer and the red line is for the winter. You can see that the peak for both winter and summer falls within that 4 to 9 period that's shown in the red shading on the chart. And the super off-peak period represents the middle of the day when there's a lot of solar generation and the carbon intensity is lower for the electricity.
Could I ask one question?
Sure.
In the packet, I know there's the same chart in the packet, and it calls this marginal cost of energy, but it's based on a figure which is labeled average cost of energy. Isn't this actually the average cost of energy? I mean, the marginal would be the last kilowatt hour purchased, right? This is actually the average for that. I just want to be clear, the lines here are average costs, they're not marginal costs.
Commissioner, this is Jim Stack, Senior Resource Planner. What this is an average of the locational marginal prices on the grid, and those locational marginal prices reflect the marginal cost of energy at those times.
Average market.
Okay.
Just roughly, where might those be? Those are those are in the region, like NorCal or like PG&E transition points, I'm guessing.
Yes, this is Northern California, the NP15 market hub price.
Okay, next slide, please. So this slide shows the residential. We do not have residential load shape. So we use the 2 feeders in Palo Alto that are primarily serve residential customers. And so this shows the normalized load shape for those 2 feeders compared with PG&E residential customers. And the main take-home point from this slide is that the peak falls within the period from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. Next slide, please. This is the heat map that I was telling you about. And the key thing to note is that the green area, the green areas shown at the different months and the different times of day represent the times where there's the least carbon intensity in the electricity. And so if you look at the time period between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., that is the data really that's supporting that super off-peak period that we're recommending. Next slide, please. So this is the proposed rates in the winter. And so you can see in that peak period between 4 and 9 p.m. that the rate is higher, 26.6 cents. And that is higher than our tier 2, our current tier 2 rate. You can see the standard rates as they will appear in fiscal year 26 in the horizontal lines in the middle of the chart, the tier 1 and the tier 2. And then the time of use rates are shown in the bars, the green bars and the orange bar, showing the super off-peak in the very dark green, the off-peak in the light green, and then the orange has the peak. And then you can see, if you go to the next slide, you can see the proposed rates for the summer, which we're defining as June through September. And you can see that that peak is higher, consistent with what we looked at in terms of the cost chart. And it's about 33.3 cents. Next slide, please. This slide tries to give some bookends on how much money customers could save. I'll start with the tables at the bottom. Now, it's not very realistic for customers to utilize all of their shift all of their electricity into the super off-peak, but since we're trying to bookend what savings could be, the table on the left shows what a customer could, what customers at different usage levels could save if they shifted all of their usage into the super off-peak. And you can see that customers at different usage levels could save per month between $6 and $77. On the other side, on the right, you can see we've assumed that those customers don't change their behavior at all. And so if they move on to the time of use rate, those smaller usage customers and average use customers were benefiting more from the tier 1 rate than they will be from the time of use rate if they don't change their behavior. There's really no savings and their bill could go up a little bit. At high use levels, without any behavior change at all, customers could benefit from switching to the time of use rate because the average time of use rate, weighted average of the time of use rate is a little bit lower than what they're experiencing right now with the tier 2 rate. As collectively as a whole, if again, trying to bookend this amount of money that could be saved for the residential class, if all the E1 residential customers enrolled in the time of use rate and all the time of use rate customers shifted all of their use into the super off-peak period, the total that could be saved is about 5.4 million collectively, which is about 35% of those commodity revenues that are expected for that customer class. Next slide, please. Staff plans to present these E1 residential time of use voluntary rates to the Finance Committee in August and to the Council, including a public hearing in September, in order to prepare those rates for January implementation. Staff is, again, as I mentioned, planning to present implementation plan details to the UAC at the October meeting. And in order to prepare for the launch of time of use rates, some of the work that's ongoing that staff is doing is modifying the billing system, making changes to the billing system to be able to use the AMI data to support these time of use rates, developing logistics related to customer enrollment and tools and communication, and we'll be talking about that in October, developing measures of program success, and preparing to be able to analyze the customer changes as a result of this program using that AMI data and the data that results from this. To ensure smooth rollout, as I mentioned, we plan for an initial testing period with a small group of customers beginning in January 2026, followed by an increase in customer enrollments after that once we're ready. Next slide, please. So our recommendation that we're bringing to the UAC tonight is to recommend that the City Council adopt a resolution adding this voluntary rate schedule, E1 time of use, that would be applicable to residential customers who are individually metered starting January 1st, 2026. And with that, I would look forward to hearing from your questions and any questions you may have.
If any member of the public would like to speak on item number 4, please raise your hand or press star 9 on your phone now. We do have one hand raised. Hamilton, you may speak.
Thank you. This is Hamilton Hitchings. I support the proposed voluntary opt-in residential electric time of use program with a couple of suggested improvements. Because this program is fairly benign, it should not be held up for requests for additional information in order to be respectful of staff's limited time. Instead, rate adjustments can be made based on real data once the program is up and running. I recommend you reduce the peak hour time, since 5 hours is too long to keep the hot water turned off, and dial down HVAC substantially. Even cutting the peak period by 1 hour to start at 5 p.m. would be a big help. Let's remember grid outages happen in the summer, not winter, and that many folks work and live at home during the day. To dramatically increase adoption, you could analyze each AMI's customers' usage and send them a customized email or letter telling them how much they would save if they switched and did nothing, and also if they switched and made some adjustments. If they were charging electric cars during peak times, you could add this to their customized letter. This is something that can easily be outsourced to a data analyst consulting company. You could also give a bonus utility discount, like double their monthly savings for the first month after they switch to TOU as an acquisition cost. It could be funded out of cap and trade if they were reducing their GHG assumption. But regardless, more folks would be motivated to time shift usage if there was an immediate savings. According to the staff packet, if the TOU program is successful, it will reduce Palo Alto peak usage by less than 1%. A likely bigger reduction could be made as a separate initiative if time was spent to understand why the commercial TOU was such a failure and to fix it. The biggest question is whether you will get the adoption to pay for the additional administration overhead of the residential TOU. If there is insufficient participation, I recommend canceling the program. While the reduction in peak savings may be small, I think it will reduce stress on the residential electric grid and give customers a way to make their usage greener while rewarding them financially. We should give it our best shot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public speakers?
No other hands raised.
All right. Commissioner Metz?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Overall, I think this is a good idea as a starting point for trying out time use rates more broadly, doing experiments around different rate tariff structures and so on. The one thing I had problem with was understanding what the goal was of the TOU, except maybe just trying not to be too disruptive. But I think it's important going forward as these get larger and more impactful to set explicit goals for TOU tariffs. And specifically goals I would recommend. Number one would be big financial impact, and most especially to cut costs by reducing or deferring CapEx, since we have a huge CapEx for grid mod planned. So, any kind of tariff structure that would help us reduce those capital costs would be a big deal, or reducing our RA costs or our energy costs, as this does consider, or ways to increase profits by selling more, using less energy in the city, so we have more energy to sell during CAISO peak periods. Second, beyond money, would be big sustainability impacts to reduce greenhouse gases, and also reducing our CapEx, which reduces embedded greenhouse gases in infrastructure that we wouldn't have to build. I think that's really important, and I think that's an area that I would build on that's not in here, namely the CapEx is assumed to be fixed, and the distribution cost is assumed to be fixed, which it's obviously not. And I think that's an important one to look at. And the third would be emergency preparedness impact. And so, for example, omitting NEM, the solar customers, from this stage, I think it's fine, for the first go round, but it seems like those customers with solar, with storage, and with electric vehicles, which sounds like is now a third of the city, something like that. That would be really important to test for testing VTG, and would people sell energy to the utility when we need it, and so on. So I think those three things, financial impact, sustainability impact, emergency preparedness, would be really important goals to think through explicitly as we move forward with this. Because obviously the purpose is to change people's behavior. And I can kind of understand in the first pass why you analyze it without expecting a change. And with the rates as they're proposed, I don't think there'll be a big change, because the rate deltas are pretty small. But anyway, I would recommend that continuing in this path, but being a little more explicit about the goals and what we're trying to test by doing these. Thank you.
Commissioner Croft.
Thank you. So, I've benefited from being on the subcommittee, the finance subcommittee. So thanks for all the opportunity to discuss there. I do have a couple questions and some statements. One is that this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to be on the Utilities Advisory Commission, is my interest in sustainability, getting electricity use to coincide with our big solar and renewable supply in the state of California. So really trying to get people to move over to when the energy is actually clean, and understanding that we couldn't really do very much until we had AMI roll out. So now we have AMI rolled out, we have proposed time of use rates. And I do think, my past 8 years before coming here was working on smoking cessation, right? And it's a really hard change to do. And one of the most impactful things to get people to quit is literally the price of cigarettes, like cigarette taxes going up. But you can save like $8 a day, $10 a day by quitting smoking. And if you look at how much we're going to save here, it's just so small, right? It's really a shame that it's not more. But just taking some of the lessons from behavior change from other areas and looking at it here. Okay, so the financial benefit is not going to be that great. But I mean, you have lots of opportunities to communicate kudos to people who are actually moving over to cleaner energy. So one of the things, just for the benefit of people on the UAC, was I was in favor of naming, branding the super off-peak period to something like solar savings, or, we talked about eco savings. Could we try to brand it and help people understand that there's really a benefit, like educate people about what's going on in the California energy market and how much solar we're building out, how much we actually have. And in the middle of the day, the price of solar or energy can actually go negative or we have excess, right, that we're banking in batteries. And we really want people to use energy during that time of day. So whatever we can do, I absolutely urge us to communicate with people about why we want them to move to the middle of the day. And I guess question for staff was, if you could just explain again, there was some glitch about why the middle of the day isn't necessarily eco. I'd love to hear what was the reason why it's not necessarily always that. I have a series of questions. So one of them is why it's not fair to call the middle of the day clean energy. That was one question. A second question was, I know our rates have to be based on cost of service. And I'm wondering, even though as one of the factors we priced in, or at least we're presenting here, is greenhouse gas carbon emissions. But I'm wondering, is that actually part of the COSA, or is it just that we're showing that the COSA aligns with the time of the low carbon emissions? So how is greenhouse gas intensity priced in, if at all? And then actually, I'll just take those as my two questions.
So I was going to ask Lisa to respond to the COSA correspond. We were checking how the COSA lined up with the heat map.
Right. So that heat map was really used to support the super off-peak period that we're proposing, which is the middle of the day when there's a lot of solar, those green areas in that heat map. So that's how that piece of information is really being used as part of the cost of service. We have to charge the cost of service, but we can use this information to influence the periods that we pick. So this is helping us to determine that super off-peak period.
How does this heat map affect COSA? Does it affect the cost, or are we just saying that these are, or do our costs not vary that much? We're trying to pick the exact windows we want to use.
We're selecting the periods, yes, the windows that we want to use. So we're using this to select the window, and then we're looking at the cost information to pick the price to charge during that time period.
Okay. So I guess as a follow-up to that, I do think an outtake from these meetings was that I am glad to see there's a difference between peak and super off-peak, and, off-peak and super off-peak. But the bigger the difference, the more influential it will be in changing behavior. So did we look at other periods to see if we might be able to find different periods that had a higher differential during peak and off-peak? Like if you squished, or if you chose a different window, could you get a different differential?
I think we did look at that a little bit, but not necessarily with that goal in mind of trying to maximize the differential. So that's some, but I think that when we looked at different time periods, it didn't change it very much. So I think probably the most impactful thing would be if we change the width of the peak period, but then that's also going to change the rate in the off-peak period and increase it a little bit. So it doesn't change it very much, but it's something, that we did look at, but we don't have alternatives prepared for today.
Okay, because I guess that would be my only thought, is that given that the incentive to change doesn't give you much return from a financial perspective, if there was an opportunity to alter the period slightly in order to achieve a bigger differential, it sounds like there's not much you can do to achieve much of a differential, but the more differential, the better.
And and just to finish up on that topic and then address your first question, I think, we were just trying to balance what's happening in the service territories around us, this heat map, the prices, finding kind of the sweet spot in there. And I wouldn't say there's something magical about it, but it is in where we settled on, considering all those factors combined. To your first question about the naming, my recollection, and we had a great conversation with the subcommittee about the opportunities to point out the benefits in addition to financial savings to use in our communications and outreach materials when we get there. My recollection was one of the ideas was labeling the super off-peak with solar. We were concerned that, you know, there's lots of energy mixed in that time period, not just solar. And so we wanted to be careful about that. And then eco, there was a conversation around, to some people, eco means cheap and not high quality. And where we landed was that when the marketing professionals get involved in this outreach effort, that we will take that the concepts and the spirit of that conversation with the subcommittee into account when we are developing those materials, but that we weren't at a place where we felt like we could rename these on the rate schedule and feel like it had been vetted properly with folks who are professionals in that area.
Okay. Yeah, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much, staff, for the presentation. I thought it was very informative and detailed. And thank you again for all your engagement with the 2 subcommittee meetings on this topic. Again, very informative, very helpful, and much appreciated for all your time and attention to this. You know, ultimately, and this is just my comments for the commission, I'm in support of this. Ultimately, the impact of this is likely going to be low. It's a voluntary option. Most customers would pay more if they made the shift, unless we can convince them to change their behavior, which, as Commissioner Croft mentioned, is also potentially difficult to do. But, you know, the cost to implement this and study this is also low. If I remember correctly from our subcommittee meeting, it was around $100,000 to implement. Is that correct?
I will have to look up what we said to the subcommittee, but that sounds about right.
Thank you. So it's a marginal part of the electric utility budget, so it won't affect electric rates very much, if at all. And I think that's important because we wouldn't want to spend a lot of money on this program if the likelihood folks are going to use it is low. But because the cost is low to implement it, it's really worth studying it. As we discussed at the subcommittee, this is the way the state is heading. It has headed that way. And it's worth us studying it to see how it works in Palo Alto and how we might improve it, including the public comments we received and comments from the commissioners. The other aspect of this is there are going to be Palo Alto specific things, just given the unique nature of our part in the electric market, where if there's something that's very good for the state, it might be more neutral for Palo Alto. We touched on some of those aspects when we talked about the microgrid study. So that's just something to keep in mind too. Commissioner Phillips isn't here, but I thought he raised great points on the question of adverse selection during the budget subcommittee meeting. That's the idea that by offering this program, those who would benefit the most would be the ones adopting it. And so there's some potential for those folks to pay less revenue into the system, whereas the rest of us might end up subsidizing that. Again, something to study. I'm not too concerned about it right now, but I think staff is on that point. Will keep us updated. And this is now just a separate just statement or question. One aspect I was thinking about is studying, as we implement this program, studying the effective time of use on our seniors. Many seniors can't really control when they use energy. For example, if they're using medical equipment at home. So I do think that's something we should take a look at is if a senior were to switch, what is the cost impact for that, for them? And also what options can we provide those folks if we were ever to adopt TOU more universally to help avoid added costs for their necessary medical use. Thank you again, staff.
Can I move the motion?
Sure.
Specifically, what's on the screen?
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I don't see any other lights. Do you want to call the roll?
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Sharf,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater,
Yes.
Commissioner Gupta.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-6-0.
Okay. Do we have any commissioner comments? Seeing none.
Yes.
Let's go ahead.
I want to speak in protest to the way in which, and I have sent this as mentioned to public comment, on the way in which you, Chair Scharf, last month conducted the nomination and election for chair and vice chair. I could have and should have made this comment in the moment at the meeting last month, but essentially, I can only speak for myself, but I was confronted, I think we all were confronted with an election, important, but it was immediately put to motion that, in this case, it was Vice Chair Mauter be reappointed. And this is to say nothing at all as to the qualification and the gratitude I feel for everyone who's serving, or, it's not about, this is all about process. But to be confronted with an up and down vote on a vice chair without discussion on a number of things, like, does the nominee want to be appointed? Presumably, of course, the nominee would say if not, but I sat there not knowing. What other members of the commission, members of the commission, if any, would want to be appointed to the vice chair and then the chair position? And without encouragement or opportunity really to ask, what does the nominee propose to do in this position if reappointed, if anything different at all, but some sort of statement or a statement as to why that candidate would want to be voted for. So I thought that the process could have been handled differently.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments. Motion for adjournment.
I did have a point of order question.
Sure.
In the agenda, it says future topics will be discussed at the June 4 meeting.
Yes.
Do they mean, this is June 4, do they mean July 9th?
Good point. I assume they mean July 9th.
Chair
Thank you for
Scharf.
catching that.
Chair Scharf,
Yes.
Kaylee Barton, Utilities Administrative Assistant. It was discussed that we would be discussing the future and upcoming topics every other meeting going forward. So this date is to represent, this is the day that we would be discussing the
So
future.
we're supposed to
upcoming.
talk about it right now.
Correct.
My bad. Okay, let's go back then. We'll do it. And is there any future topics that anyone wants to discuss? All right,
I have one.
go ahead.
Sorry, I pushed the button, but.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask staff, we in the past have talked about the integrated resource plan and had, projection of our energy load over time and what our current power purchase agreements show. What are we contracted for, and realizing that we're going to need to fill in the uncontracted periods, and then discussion. Some ideas were brought to us about what kind of portfolios we thought were interesting, and I just haven't seen it on the calendar again. And I do see that council has an energy storage services agreement coming up, not that that's a power purchase agreement, but I'm wondering when we will see that again, and hoping that we will have a chance to weigh in on the portfolio as we consider options.
Correct. So as I kind of mentioned earlier in the meeting, there's two power purchase agreements that will be coming for consideration at your July meeting. And as part of those presentations, and we'll fully agendize them here because we talk about the IPA energy storage service agreement. We're also going to be adding a solar one as well. It's called the IPA energy. A power purchase agreement. So as part of that presentation, we have heard and we're planning to include what our projections are and frankly our portfolio and what that looks like. So I just wanted to mention that to the commission.
Great.
Commissioner Metz?
Yeah, I had sort of meta question about future topics, which is when will the work plan be published? That as, you know, we worked on last meeting, it seems like that's really important foundation to be setting agenda.
So thank you for that. The work plan, and we'll be updating as staff this forecast of the rolling calendar. The intent is to bring that at the next available meeting for council, which would be the August meeting after their council break. That's frankly the earliest one we can get. There's a lot of items going to city council, frankly, in the June timeframe at the end of the fiscal year. So
Right.
they'll be on their
Will we
agenda.
be able to review it
So
before it goes to city council?
at the last meeting, my understanding was the direction from this commission was that the staff should make the corrections noted from that report. It will be published for the public to see, so we have made those changes. If the commission would want to see a copy of that, we just had some clear direction to move it forward. So I'm not sure what the request is.
Why don't you just send it to everyone?
I would like to see a copy.
To be clear, Chair, commissioners, you will not be able to respond to that or provide feedback on it. Otherwise, that's considered a serial meeting.
Is that sufficient?
Well, I think let's see what it is. You know, I mean, it was a complicated, as you know, we've talked about, it was a complicated meeting and I just I'm not trying to twist and turn it any which way. I'm just trying to see that it conforms with what we agreed.
So staff can provide it to the commission for.
I think what
viewing
Kylie's
purpose.
trying to say is don't send to commissioners, hey, there's a problem with this, there's a problem with that. We can't have a discussion about it online.
Even at that, commissioners, if you provide staff individual feedback that you disagree with a component in the draft that's sent, and there's then at some point potentially conflicting feedback, that is not an appropriate method to amend the draft.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, you won't be able to amend the draft.
Right. I'm not looking for any opportunity to amend it. I'm looking to just be sure it agrees with what I understood that we said.
Commissioner Mauer.
Can I move to, are we done here?
I think what Commissioner Gupta.
No worries. Yeah, I had a question about cap and trade policy. So I know from the director's report that this was discussed just as an informational piece in front of council. Are there any planned changes or proposed changes to the cap and trade policy before that might come before UAC or to city council in the future?
So as you may recall, that was part of the SCAP funding plan. So there'll be some items that will come before at least the SCAP committee, and we'll have to take a look on what that schedule looks like and returning back to this commission. But that would probably be the appropriate area to have that discussion.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, seeing no other comments?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second. You want to take a vote?
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Scharf,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater,
Yes.
Commissioner Gupta.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
And we're adjourned.